Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Breaking Bit. My name is Walker America. I am your host, and I am extremely excited to be here back with you again today. We once again have a slightly outside of our usual scheduled programming on Tuesdays. We're here on a Friday, but what a Friday it is. We are here with Alex Thorn. You are head of research at Galaxy. Is that title correct, Alex?
That is right, Walker. Hello. Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
It's good to be here with you, man. I've been trying to get you on my regularly scheduled Bitcoin podcast for some time, but you're a hard man to track down. But I managed to get a little bit of your time today, and I'm going to use up every minute of it I can. And I think it's a perfect time to have you on here. Markets feel tumultuous. There is apparently blood in the streets. I'm not sure if any of it is yours or mine, but there is a lot of it. There's a lot of fear in the air. I want to just do a vibe check with you. Like, what are you seeing right now? You very famously, and it's all over the news, capitulated and dropped your year-end price target from 180
Yeah.
or 185 down to 120. Talk about that. What's going on? Why do you hate Bitcoin so much?
Yeah, that was the reaction from some people. To be clear, I think, on December 31st, 2024, so last year, I said that we expected Bitcoin could be 185 in Q4 of this year. Well, here we are in Q4, and Bitcoin, as we record, as we're live here, is trading at 102,552, according to my screen. So not close to 185, right? So I think and at the time, in December of last year, I was on the slightly conservative side. I tweeted a list of everybody else's predictions that I was aware of, and I was in the sort of low to middle, like low end of the mid range there. I haven't seen anybody else update, but you don't have to, but I think we just thought it made sense to look at it again and say, now that we're deeply into Q4, where will we end and I'm still saying that, what I end this with, that near prior all-time highs is still a reasonable target for a short-term bull, right? Like 120 in 6 weeks is a 20% gain. It's not too shabby. I don't know why they're saying I'm so bearish, right? So look, and as far as the vibes, Bitcoin, you're looking at 9% up year to date at the moment. Ether is 2%. Solana's down 15% on the year at this point, right? So, and by the way, included in this report that we put out about lowering this Bitcoin target for end of year, I think something like 70 of the top cryptos by market cap are more than 50% below their all-time highs. So actually, outside of Bitcoin, the crypto markets are broadly damaged at the moment, right? Like you pretty much haven't made any money if you weren't in like Bitcoin specifically. And one of the interesting dynamics this year and even like the last 2 years, the sort of like crypto metas have not involved Bitcoin. And so broadly, like the timeline in crypto Twitter land has been like short Bitcoin. And that's like the only one that's even remotely truly holding up at the moment, right? I mean, it's one of the, so it's not widely owned. Bitcoin's really much more widely owned now by institutions and through ETFs and macro traders. And rather than, the degens looking for the 10, 100 or 1,000x, right? Like, so you might see, if you're, deeply terminally online, even more pain, I think, than the market is actually sort of experiencing, because the people online are mostly in altcoins. And those have gotten absolutely wrecked. Liquidity has dried up since like this October 10th leverage wipeout that happened. That really did sort of materially damage the liquidity profile in crypto. It will rebound, but $75 billion of open interest was wiped out. 35% of the total futures open interest was wiped out in about 6 hours. That's enormous carnage, right? And that we think there's probably market makers and funds that have, even if they weren't blown completely out during that thing, have since pulled back. And so you can see liquidity is lower. That makes moves more exaggerated, right? Like it's all sort of playing it. And it's been an interesting year, because going into the year, you saw that President Trump had been reelected. You knew that he was bringing a big pro Bitcoin and crypto agenda. You didn't quite know what it was, but you knew you were meant to be long. And so long Bitcoin in like November and December, particularly last year, was like the hottest trade in the world, right? Like everyone went long Bitcoin, everyone. And that just isn't the case today. It's not the hottest trade in the world, and markets require attention, right? Part of the headwinds I think that Bitcoin faced, part of the reasons it didn't get to 185 like I had thought it would, is people started trading Nvidia stock and AI names and quantum stocks and gold, right? Like it just wasn't. It's not that it's not a good trade. It's, I love Bitcoin. I'm personally fine with this. I like to buy Bitcoin. I've been buying Bitcoin for years, and it's nicer when the number's lower. I get more Bitcoin, right? Like for a long term, all of this is that I'm describing is really sort of like the market moment. It's not about the long-term thesis for Bitcoin, which is very much intact in our view. And we're very long Bitcoin, and I'm very long Bitcoin. So that's not the fear. The fear is more just that, like, why didn't we perform like people thought it would in 2025? And I think one of the big answers is that there's been a lot of other good trades too. Whereas this, when it was really running after the election, was the number one good trade, right? And so like everybody piled into this trade, drove Bitcoin up to all-time highs repeatedly, right? And then, there are other factors too, but I would say there's a little bit of a reset that needs to happen here, right? It's been happening since that leverage wipeout. It takes people time when they lose money or get damaged, or the market gets, liquidity comes out of the market. It takes time for people to settle, a new foundation to be built, right, in the market, so to speak. And look, I mean, the broad case remains very much intact, but I think it's pretty reasonable to doubt, numbers like 200K by end of year. We're only 6 weeks away from that end of year, right? So that was sort of the reasoning, and there are other aspects too I could go into if you're interested, but I think one of the most interesting is simply the leverage wipeout really did sort of materially dent the liquidity profile, and then competition from other narratives this year that were really exciting for investors.
Well, no, I appreciate the background on that, and it is, from my perspective, very satisfying to see the quote crypto ecosystem get absolutely slaughtered while Bitcoin kind of trades like a stable coin. All that being said, I think there's a lot of we always try to retroactively attribute a narrative to things when we see price action happening, right? So it's, a lot of times there's paper Bitcoin being sold, there's, whatever it might be. And I think right now, maybe what people are finally coming around to is perhaps it's not paper Bitcoin that's keeping the price at these levels. Perhaps a lot of it is just there's a ton of massive whales who are dumping positions they've held for over a decade, and they're moving a mass amount of coins. You guys very famously executed an 80,000 Bitcoin sale, correct? I mean, that an unfathomable amount of Bitcoin. Like, how much do you think that is playing into the current price levels?
Yeah, I think distribution from whales and older coins has also been a huge source of headwinds. I think it's ultimately bullish. I mean, would you prefer it to happen at 100K or 150K? I mean, you're going to face that wall. I mean, this is the wall of worry, right? And I happen to think it's not so. Look, the folks that I've talked to that have been selling Bitcoin from a long time ago, it's not that they're disillusioned per se or anything like that. It's that they couldn't sell. Okay. The market was not liquid enough to sell this amount of coin, both in Bitcoin or dollar terms. So now you're sitting on potentially life-altering gains, and you actually can say you get this deep passive bid from the institutions, the ETFs. I mean, the whole liquidity profile of Bitcoin has dramatically improved over the last few years to the point when someone can exit $9 billion. I mean, that's a real market. That's a big, giant market if you can come in and out at that level of size. So I think that's been a big part of it. I mean, we had some stuff about that in here. I mean, there's many different ways to look at that number, but one of the ones I was looking at was just the 5+ year revived supply. So that's anyone who bought it, as late as November 2020, which actually is an interesting time to think about, because that was right when we were just about to recross the prior all-time high of 20K. Something like 43% of all the 5+ old coins that have ever moved on the network at any time moved in the last 2 years. And in dollar terms, it's over $100 billion. And that's 75% of the value of 5-year-old coins that have ever moved in the last 24 and 25. So this is that distribution has been occurring. It's obviously in the long run, I think it's extremely bullish. I think Jordy Visser had the good piece about Bitcoin's IPO. He was talking about this. James Check has also written prolifically and I think very accurately and presciently about this phenomenon. And I think the IPO, it's not so much that it's a question of maturity. It's becoming mature, right? When a company IPOs, the early venture investors sell their shares to the new entrants, right? And there is an aspect to, I would say, that most, sort of like OG whales that I've known are not nearly as fundamentalist about Bitcoin as the contemporary sort of intelligentsia. And there's a sort of a famous phrase about this called the zeal of the convert, which is all about how like the new entrants into religious movements and cults and whatever else communities tend to be even more fundamentalist about the mission and the philosophy of the thing than even the founders of the thing. And I think that's true. So I think that plays into some Bitcoiners' confusion or even anger I've heard out there on the timeline that these OGs are selling and what they don't believe in Bitcoin anymore and all this stuff. And I don't think that's totally right, but it certainly is happening. And in my mind, it's healthy. We create a much more distributed base of ownership. And it's also just kind of what winning looks like ultimately is like, like we need a lot more people to own Bitcoin. I don't need necessarily one person to own a lot more Bitcoin. And we need more people to own Bitcoin. That gets Bitcoin more widely used, more adopted, sets the foundation for the future.
I think that that's a really important point for people to understand, is that it is good for OGs to be selling their coins and creating a wider swath of people who actually own Bitcoin. Like, we would rather have that be very wide than incredibly centralized and too deep in terms of ownership. That is a good thing for Bitcoin. That creates a more resilient market. I'm curious though. I mean, Bitcoin, there's always talk about Bitcoin's not going under 100K again. I think my own wife posted a meme about that, and she has since had to, retract it, much like your price prediction statement. And furthermore, we've done the meme now. We've done the Bitcoin crashes to 100K meme, like amazing. But I think a lot of people see us go down and we dip, a couple K below down to whatever 98 or whatever it got down to, and they think, okay,
yeah,
well, this bull market sucks. Like this sucks. Is this over now? Like, are we about to go into a protracted bear? What's your stance on this? Are you seeing, like, is the bull market over? Is it just heating up? Do the previous 4-year cycles just no longer apply? How, is this time different? How are you thinking about this? How are you navigating this?
Yeah, I do think in the 90s is a pretty important line for bulls to make a stand if they want the bull market to earnestly continue. I'm of the view that like 95K is totally possible. And I know that's sort of where like average short-term cost basis is, if we look on checks dashboards, right? Like that's where something like more than half the supply will be underwater at 95K, like, which is another thing people don't realize. Most of the coins that exist have been bought above 95K. This is a world that is comfortable and thinks that 95K plus is a good price for Bitcoin. Like, that's great. That means that like the thing is working, right? It's not that it like gets too overheated at over 100. Like 100's a good price for a lot of people. I mean, most of the coins have moved on chain, I think, at prices higher than 95K. But I would say that could be potentially a pivot. I mean, I think we have a variety of views inside Galaxy about this. Some people think it could go lower. Other people don't think it will get to 95, right? It's just, I would say that I think that, in the mid to low 90s is sort of a crucial defense spot for bulls that want this to be just a dip in a bull market and not perhaps something more protracted. I think the reality is right now it's just a bit squishy out there in Bitcoin markets, right? It just doesn't, we went below 100 on Tuesday. I think, we got to like 98.9 or something like that. And then it got bought up. We got back to like I think as high as about 104. We're around 103 right now. Like it's pretty indecisive feeling about this one. Clearly 100 is getting bought on, under 100, those little dips are getting bought, right? So that's good, but I think typically for a strong bottom for us to feel confident that we've seen the low, usually you want to see like a real fear wick down lower, and it doesn't quite feel like we've done that yet. So I think it's totally reasonable to be expecting something lower in the very near term. And then you'd want to see like significant volume come in and buy that bottom, right? And we saw some strong bounce, but I'd like to see it even stronger before I'm confident that we're not going to, right now we're chopping around in 102, 103. Like, does that feel like it would be crazy if in 6 hours or this weekend you looked and it was 99.5? I don't think that feels crazy, right? And you want it to feel sturdier. So, and I would say, until we get that sturdier foundation and the market becomes more confident that like the path of least resistance is higher and not lower, where right now it really feels like the risk is to the downside and not the upside. You know, I don't, if we're sitting in this indecisive spot and then we get sort of macro or equity market risk shocks, that I think is what could send Bitcoin lower, right? Like there was a story in Bloomberg on Monday that was widely shared about a survey of CEOs that think a 10% correction in equity markets would be like totally expected and like healthy, right? Well, I think if you see like S&P go down 10%, Bitcoin's probably much lower. And so you really want that stuff could compound, right? I mean, the good news is that there's nothing really fundamental here about Bitcoin at issue, as far as I can tell. This is more about flows and attention diversion. There was sort of some market microstructure issues that I think were exposed in perps markets around October 10th that contributed to this and sort of set the foundation for this thing to bleed a little bit lower in the near term. But broadly speaking, like, Bitcoin's working great. It's the governments are going to keep spending a lot. They're going to keep debasing, right? Like the long-term story here, I think, is very much intact. It's also one that will be characterized more by passive bids. I mean, even just like earlier this month, I think last month on October 15th, Morgan Stanley finally said that their wealth channel can actually recommend a Bitcoin allocation now to all their clients up to 4%. That's something we've been waiting for like 2 years for the big wealth advisor networks to say. So I think you're going to start to see, this sort of goes into the 4-year cycle question, Walker, like, I think the future is going to be characterized by more passive bid, more lower volatility, probably less rotation among cryptos in the scheme of things. Cause a financial advisor is not on like Poloniex, like saying what's the next hot crypto, right? It's probably going to be stickier, maybe a little bit of less intra crypto cyclicality. I do think the 4-year cycle, even if it were to happen again, like tomorrow we go into and it plays out, I still don't believe in it. Like at this point, it just doesn't make sense to me, decoupled from macro and global liquidity cycles, right? Like markets do go through cycles. I don't think the Bitcoin 4-year cycle really is a thing. And, one thought experiment to sort of, examine that is to say, like, did Bitcoin go up in, summer 2020 because the halving was in May 2020? Or did it go up because they debased all the money, they mailed checks to every person in the United States, like, right? Paul Tudor Jones said it was like gold. I mean, to me, I think it went up because of that and people sitting at home trading on Robinhood and having free money, and also the idea of money being really pretty much like brought into question with the amount of printing that they did. You're like, wait a second, they can just send $2,000 to every American? Like, what is money, right? Like, I think those were much more fundamental drivers of Bitcoin's rise in 20 and 21 than the 4-year cycle, for example. And so I do, it's maybe the most cursed words in all of financial markets, but I do believe this time is different. And that doesn't mean there won't be dips. I mean, look, we're at a 20% correction, 25%-ish from all-time highs. So that, there will be dips, there will be corrections. It's not like going to be a straight line to Valhalla. But I do think that, Bitcoin just looks a lot different. I said this, the days of, 10x, 1,000x, in a short period of time, I think are over for Bitcoin. People got to grasp with that now, which is good. Let's get down to business, use it as savings technology, get it in the right hands and portfolios, and learn how to self-custody. And it starts to be a better asset for bigger pools of capital when it's not a 100 vol asset, right? So I think all of this is good and healthy. I do think in the short term, like, if we see a tariff tantrum or a macro shock or a big equity, markets pullback, that puts Bitcoin in jeopardy as well.
No, I think that's fair, and I appreciate
that puts the bull market in jeopardy, I should say.
Yeah, but not the cycle itself, because Like you're positing, does it really even exist?
I don't think it wouldn't be related to like the cycle, right? I
Right.
think now, but there is this AI equity trade cycle that's sort of happening in equity markets. Could it be related? Could that impact it? Yes, right. But I don't think it's like the Bitcoin 4-year cycle anymore. Bitcoin's grown up. It's 17 now. It can finally well, it's about to be able to, buy cigarettes and get drafted, next year. So
can't drink until it's 21.
Mature asset.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Well, that's going to be a wild one.
Oh boy.
But I think that's it. It is a more mature asset, and it's going to trade and that also means it could be more susceptible to macro, the other things that the mature investor class trades.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really interesting to look at this right now. And I think maybe a lot of the confusion that people, like the sentiment I'm seeing is a lot of just confusion. Like, why aren't we going up more? I was promised Valhalla tomorrow and we're not there yet. Yeah. Like I'm still, on mushrooms fighting with my axe in the bloody ditches, of the fjord. But I think a lot of that is because people see this institutional bid, right? They see the ETF bid, they see the Bitcoin Treasury Company bid, and they're like, why no moon? And again, like that comes back to, I think, a lot of the whales diversifying, which like the 80,000 Bitcoin whale, that's more whale than, or excuse me, more Bitcoin than every treasury company except MicroStrategy. Like, that's so, right. It dwarfs them all. So like, we're talking about a lot of size here. And then I think more of the confusion comes in. I love kind of your macro perspective a little bit on this with just, because like what the Fed does matter. Like liquidity does matter in terms of the fiat petrodollar cuck-buck price of Bitcoin, which like we do pay attention to. Obviously, we're talking about it right now. Yeah. And it determines how many sats you can buy for your infinitely printable fiat cuck-bucks. So like it does matter. What do you think about this? I mean, the Fed has clearly turned more dovish after historic tightening. Bitcoin performed shockingly well during that historic tightening period, actually. And I think that surprised a lot of people. How are you looking at that? And are you at all surprised with that, kind of this Fed signaling is not causing more of a shift in appetites?
I don't know if I'm surprised. It's not really causing a shift yet in other markets either. Right. I think people are doubting and also, I think the last cut they did most characterized as a hawkish cut, because they said, yeah, we're cutting, but also like, and they said a bunch of mean hawkish stuff in the press conference. Jay Powell did. So look, the Fed's in a really tough position, right? I mean, as I guess they almost always are. I mean, it really is an awful job, to be honest. Got to respect Jay Powell in that way, and I do. I think he's actually been quite a good Fed chair. I mean, if you have to do that job, I mean, he's not solving the fundamental problems that the Federal Reserve has, like the fact that our money just degrades forever, right? And in fact, that's their stated policy, right? They by the way, the thing that's a feature, not a bug to the Fed, right? Like, so the printer is coming. Look, they're gonna. I think they're gonna finally. So they're winding down QT. So which of course sets this. You got to stop tightening before you can start easing, right? I don't know. I think something that would really, I think, impact the market more than simply lowering the Fed funds rate would be if they start getting into the market with quantitative easing, right, and other asset purchases. That's probably coming. I mean, let me say it this way. That is certainly coming at some point. It will always come. They will always print. They have to, right? We know this. The only other options to solve this national debt are not palatable, right? Like crippling austerity. Every politician that proposes that will lose their election, right? Like, and worse, it could cause a revolution that upends society. So that they can't raise taxes to 99% and cut government services to 0. So really the only thing you can do is inflate your way out. You hope that they also come with some fiscal prudence. So we at least maybe stop growing the debt so badly, but none of that, unfortunately, is up to the Fed. And so their only tools here are, rates and market intervention. And so they're, to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Like that's all they're gonna, I'm very confident. The question is when, right? And so I'm not really quite surprised that it's not because the Fed, even though they're cutting, they're not, drunk driving at the wheel at the moment, the way you might be able to say they were during COVID with just like enormous amounts of intervention. But if they start to get more and more dovish, right? Like, and obviously, I would say that's the likely inclination, especially if we get a new Fed chair, right? Like Trump's first appointee is Stephen Miran, who is on the dovish side, right? On every dot plot, right? Presumably, the next addition that Trump makes will also be on the dovish side. That's what the market expects, right? So I think it will matter. I think it will continue to highlight the perfect programmable scarcity of Bitcoin as an alternative. To me, that was one of the reasons, and I'm not in the mind of every Bitcoin buyer from spring and summer 2020, but like it was to the extent the halving mattered, it was because it was that beautifully coincidentally timed juxtaposition against the world's biggest decentralized first ever non-sovereign FX, which is kind of what I think of Bitcoin as. Just programmatically, no meeting, just cutting in half, like its monetary policy, perfectly transparent, incredibly neutral and predictable, versus the hair on fire money printing memes of Jay Powell with the dance music, right? Like, I mean, it was a perfect exhibition of Bitcoin's unique properties. And to me, when it comes to halvings and sort of like that's why I like the halving. It's a beautiful quadrennial. Well, I mean, I like it because it's a great feature and all that stuff too. But as an event, it's a quadrennial marketing event for Bitcoin that shows its best and most important features. And so, it'll happen again. The scarcity trade, the digital gold, hedge against fiat debasement trade, it will come back. It will always come back. I think the question is when, and markets, labor markets, things like the dovishness from the Fed can definitely add gas to that fire. And like I said, it's always coming. It's just a matter of when it actually arrives.
No, I mean, I like that. And I know you're a little tight on time here, so I want to maybe just do one more quick question and give you a chance to redeem yourself from your capitulation before we close out here with you. And thanks again for sharing your time. So, you've updated this year-end prediction now to 120K. How dare you bear in disguise as a bull? What I'm curious is, and I'm probably going to hold you to this pretty tightly. Like we've got the receipts now. What are you thinking for end of year 2026? We go a year. Let's even just say a year from today, because next month that's a little too easy. We need to give you some stretch out that time frame a bit.
Yeah, I'm going to disappoint here, Walker. I'm not prepared to put out a number yet for that, but I would say higher. And so, does that help?
I mean,
I am going to come out with, I got to do work on it though. I don't just like to throw around numbers, so I'll do some work on that. And I will say too, 26 is going to be a tricky market also. I mean, you're going into the midterms. You may or may not get like more crypto related legislation, but also you've got some tricky, like normal Washington policy issues in the election. You've got tariffs, you've got the persistent wall of worry fear in the market about the AI CapEx spend. And is it too much? Are we overbought? Like what, and I mean, Mr. Market is very anxious about that. I happen to not be as worried because I think back to like the ChatGPT moment when people remember it was Will Smith eating the spaghetti and it was like so bad. That was only like 2.5 years ago, right? Like we've come so far, but we still have so much more. Like I don't have an agent yet, like setting my kids' dentist appointments and doing my taxes. Like surely that's coming. I would assume a bunch of agents like dealing with my, the trivialities in my life that I don't want to. Like I think it's very easy to get upside surprised by new demand for compute out of the AI innovation sector, right? You can do that. Those exist, but you got to go in and do it. Like there aren't 100 million people living their lives on AI agents. And I think that's coming, like, and it could surprise how fast. The same way that Midjourney was like this crazy, amazing thing and then was obviated like in 3 months, there were better ones, right? Like, and ChatGPT, I mean, people were thinking AI was far away or it was like a science project literally like 2.5 years ago. And now it's just completely upended. And I think similar upside demand surprises from AI could, are frankly, I think more likely than not. And so I think that's a huge question for 26 too, though, is the spend on data centers and energy and compute. And we and I believe that we're not overbought, that a lot more needs to be built and spent, but constant, anxiety in the market also makes it really hard to predict because you could easily have just straight up, equity bear market if if the market decides that it is overbought and, you know, we don't need as much compute, like that's been the main trade globally this year. That's what's driven markets higher is, you know, the Mag 7 data center investment, all of that stuff. So it's hard to predict, and I'm sorry I didn't give you a number there, Walker, but
I'm okay. I was actually just testing you. I was testing you to see if you would. It was a trick question. No, it's going to be really fascinating to see too how this this data center build out coincides with Bitcoin miners having access to a lot of energy already. We're already seeing that trade play out a lot with some of these Bitcoin miners. They've been ripping while the treasury companies have been languishing in despair. So we'll see if that continues. It's going to be fascinating. Thorn, I know you've got to get rolling here. So thank you so much for your time. Very much appreciated. Guys, we're going to be right back. We're going to do a quick commercial break. And when we come back, Rob Hamilton, CEO of Anchor Watch, is going to say things that make you laugh, cry, and perhaps, dare I say, giggle. Thorn, thank you so much. Great talking to you. Let's do it again soon.
Thank you, Walker. Thanks for having me on Roxham. I got Anchor Watch hat right there. All right. And Rob's going to be good. Let me know how it goes.
Love it. Thanks, guys. All right. We will be right back. Don't touch that dial.
The future of capital markets runs on Bitcoin. Introducing Roxham, the first ever exchange where Bitcoiners can trade treasury stocks entirely in BTC. Get exposure to top Bitcoin holding companies like MicroStrategy and Metaplanet, priced in Bitcoin from the start. No fiat, no middlemen. This is what financial freedom looks like. Early access now live at roxham.com/treasuries. Built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners.
So, tell us about your furry friend here. What's his name?
Oh, this? This is Bitcoin.
Bitcoin?
It's not just a cat, he's family.
Quite a name, and I must say, looks quite pampered.
Oh, absolutely. Bitcoin deserves nothing but the best. He's my little prince.
But with such a valuable pet, aren't you afraid of losing him?
Losing Bitcoin? No, it never happened before, so it's not something I worry about. Excuse me for a moment. Bitcoin, stay here, right?
Bitcoin, no! Bitcoin, come on, little buddy. Bitcoin, I need you. Don't go.
In a world far away. Nah, just kidding. This story begins in this world. It all started in 1460 in Antwerp, when the first commodities exchange was created, but the real transformation came in 1602, when the Amsterdam Stock Exchange was founded. Considered the oldest in the world, it was the first to trade financial assets. Over the years, Britain expanded its colonial and maritime influence, and the British pound sterling overtook the Dutch guilder in the market. Thus, the London Stock Exchange became the financial centre of the world. The 20th century came, and the world got into some trouble. But shortly after World War II, the Bretton Woods Agreement established the dollar as the world's primary reserve currency, and the center of the planet moved to Wall Street. Today, we're traveling at the speed of light towards a new age, an era shaped by the consolidation of Bitcoin as the currency that will define the future of the markets. We present Roxham, a new Bitcoin-denominated market that allows trading all sorts of securities, commodities, derivatives, options, and anything you can imagine. Roxham, rock-solid markets.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
The future.
Welcome back to the Breaking Bit, everybody. My name is Walker America. We just had Alex Thorn on here. We are now joined by Rob Hamilton. Rob is the CEO of Anchor Watch. He's a man who's known for his giggling, his love of multi-sig and Bitcoin insurance. Rob, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Walker. Thanks for having me.
It is great to have you on. You know, you've been making some waves of late with various, let's say, prediction market bets that you've been placing. maybe that's a good place to start. Can you explain what's going on here? And also this, it's predicts. Is that what it is? This it's a lightning enabled prediction market. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes. So where to begin? So a prediction market, which has been becoming more and more popular over the past, I would say, 2 years. The really big breakout moment for prediction markets was the 2024 election, and kind of going through basically being able to smell out early Trump's reelection. And there was also just in general, like in current events, people have been using prediction markets more and more. The thing with a prediction market, as opposed to like an opinion poll, is that people actually put up money to determine the outcome, right? And when you actually put skin in the game and you're putting capital in there, you're able to kind of sniff through noise. My pinned tweet right now is actually just talking about, in general, like the importance of prediction markets when it comes to Bitcoin. And for those that are newer to Bitcoin, back in 2017, there was a proposal, like the SegWit 2x soft fork proposal, which never actually went active. But Bitfinex listed futures on what the price of this fork would be in the event that the fork actually occurred. And what's really important about this for consensus making is that people on Twitter or Nostr or wherever can make sock puppet accounts and like bot farm votes and kind of manipulate perception. But to actually put up capital is really the most quality indicator of what the economic sentiment of the Bitcoin network is doing. And this also happened when the Bitcoin Cash fork happened. When the fork occurred, everyone got, if you had one Bitcoin, you now had one Bitcoin BTC and you had one Bitcoin BCH, and you could sell that BCH Bitcoin BCH token for more BTC token, right? And so when you get to a divergence and a possible chain split in the network, it just helps people understand what characteristics of the network they value and what they want to pursue.
I mean, so I think it's kind of fascinating, and like obviously, if you have some sort of alpha here, right, that you believe very strongly in a particular outcome, and you view that opportunity as mispriced by everyone else, you stand to make a inordinate amount of return, right? And like to clarify, yes, like this is gambling. Like, you know, you should just stack sats and put them in cold storage, and like nobody's advocating gambling here. But if you should also do whatever the fuck you want with your money. And if you want to place bets on things you feel strongly about, I think that you should do that. Can we talk about a couple of the bets that you have publicized recently?
Yes, I would love to. Yeah. And so I've been basically what actually the first bet I proposed was that with this recent proposed soft fork called BIP 444, is that there is an effort to reduce a temporary soft fork to reduce arbitrary data storage on Bitcoin. And I realized pretty quickly, you actually, using Bitcoin script, you could make a trustless on-chain futures market where you would have a taproot address with two conditions. One, that would be, let's say for the sake of conversation, you're a big believer of BIP44 and I'm not. We could put Bitcoin into an address that has two spending conditions. One would be in June of next year. You'd pick a block height, but June of next year, and you can just spend it normally. Or I could spend it, but in May. And the difference would be the way I would spend it would violate one of the BIP 444 rules. And so normally, no one would ever put Bitcoin in an address where someone else could take the money before them. But if you believe that this is going to be activated as a consensus rule, you'd be able to say, but you're not going to be able to spend your money there. I'll be able to pull the money out though. And I offered to put up one Bitcoin to any BIP44 proponent who believes that their fork is going to activate. They would put in one Bitcoin. I would put in one Bitcoin. That prices it at a 50-50. And a lot of the communication is an absolute certainty that their fork is going to activate. And I have absolute certainty that it's not going to activate. So now we have a market. And I said, hey, 50-50 odds. Those are great odds for you. You're basically going to get two Bitcoin with full certainty. And no one took me up on it. And I tagged a bunch of people and no one took me up on it. And I then found this website, Predix. I've never used them before. They are custodial, want to call that out up front, but they actually use the Lightning Network for setting up markets, and anyone can set up a market. So that's what I did. I set up a prediction market on would BIP44 activate.
I'm honestly, first of all, I'd just like to say that I'm shocked that nobody went for the legitimate version of the "you give me 1 Bitcoin, I send you 2 back."
That's exactly what this is.
They could have done
exactly what this
without
is.
getting rugged. Like, it would have been legitimate, right? Okay, okay.
That's exactly what I'm offering. You send me 1 Bitcoin, I send you 2 back. That's actually how this works.
I mean, that's incredible. Like, so okay. There's obviously a lot of really strong feelings about this, and this is something that has dominated the discourse to an overwhelming degree. Like, I shudder to think at the actual amount of human hours that have been spent on this particular topic. Like, it is truly mind-boggling. And could those hours have been better spent somewhere else? I would argue yes, but hey, why fight external existential threats when we can, cut each other's throats within? Right?
Yes, exactly.
But anyway, okay. So I know this is a sensitive topic for people, but I think that it's a very, like, what you've done here is very interesting, because you've actually given people a chance to, if they strongly believe in something, put their money where their mouth is. And like, what has been the result of this so far? Last I checked, like, the odds were pretty incredible. If you want, like, I'm debating just going and placing a bet, like, just on the off chance, like, spend a couple sats, like, I'll take the other side of that bet. Like, the odds are almost too good to pass up. What's been the response to this?
The response, no one on the BIP 444 side has really engaged with it. Now, there has been some rules lawyering in how the bet was phrased, to which I said, okay, give me your proposed wording. I'm not trying to lawyer you here. I'm just trying to make a market here. So you tell me what wording of the bet you would like for it to be made, because I'm not trying to rules lawyer this. I just went and did something on my own because I wasn't getting much feedback. Now, at the moment, looking at the market, I've made a couple of markets now. It is currently priced at 3.89% that the reduced data temporary soft fork will be consensus enforced by the most work Bitcoin chain tip by March 1st, 2026. And just for the math here, if you could bet basically right now 400 sats. And if those and if it activates and it's true, you get 10,000 sats. So the ratio here is 25x. If you put up 400 sats, and if I'm wrong, you get 10,000 sats, is currently what the market's pricing it at. All of the order, like who has what bets, is publicly disclosed. I have put 2.47 million sats up to win 2.7 million. So basically, I get 250,000 sats, and I staked 2.5 million sats to be able to do that. That's how convinced I am I'm right. That I'm willing to give you such bad odds in my favor, because I think the chance is 0. And a lot of people are saying that it's really, really higher than that. And so no one's really taking me up on the other side.
I might have to, because that just seems like
at 400 sats for 10,000 sats is a good price. And you're just going to take them from me. So like, if you don't like me, you don't like the giggling, you think I'm arrogant and wrong, just go. Like it's right there. You put up 400 sats, you get 10,000 sats. It's like an incredible deal.
Man, I need to be careful about giggling or laughing on here, or I'm going to be turned. There it is. There's that famous giggle. There it is.
Exactly.
So this is interesting to me. Like, how, obviously your conviction is pretty high. Like, you're of the opinion that there's no way this is going to be have any meaningful adoption. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Pretty resoundingly yes.
Yeah, and this is the thing here, is that there's been I think the debate long ago stopped being civil in any way. Like, when you're accusing everyone on the other side of being a bad actor and a distributor of horrific illicit content, like, that's you've kind of you've gone the government route. Like, it's like, how would you like this wrapped? Like, anti-terrorism or protect the children? Like,
exactly.
When you start begging for the state to come in on these things, it's like, are we the baddies? Like, insert any meme you want here. But I'm curious. Do you think this has any how bad does this need to get? Like, are they going to try to fork this thing off? Even though certain people on a certain side claim that it's actually the Cortards that are the ones who would be doing the forking, and there's some verbal verbal gymnastics being done there. I mean, where are you at with this? Do you view this as something that just kind of fizzles out and goes away, or is there enough? Like, obviously, people are passionate about this. Like, I don't want to dismiss that. Like, people care. They feel like they're not being listened to, but also like it's not a democracy, and I think people forget that.
Right. I think the likelihood of a fork occurring is pretty high. I think the actors that are pushing this forward have put a lot of reputation into their conviction, and they are going to have to do it. I guess they're in the like who is forking who, like just as a little bit of a technical sidebar here. If you propose a soft fork and you activate a soft fork and the other side doesn't do anything, no one's really forked off of anything. You're in agreement. What would happen is that you would have to have a chain split where, let's say, at block height 1,000,000, it activates, and then at block height 1,000,001, a block gets found that the fork activated nodes do not recognize as valid. And now you have a chain split. Now you have nodes that have different block heights because they're not agreeing on the rules anymore. At that point, no one's actually like, it's just a chain split. So like you could, like, people could just decide to mine on the other fork. To give the opposing side the steelman argument is that in the event that this happens, that there is a chain split, it will only be temporary, because the game theory is, they use the term a prisoner's dilemma, that if at any point their fork with the reducing the data size gets majority of the hash rate, you actually would be able to wipe out the other blockchain, because the other blockchain would have a bunch of blocks that are not adhered to by the forked off nodes. And so they would pull all of the mining and the economic weight over their side. You'd have a rollback, and that's their due. And then their point is that Core would be forking off would be, you do a user rejected soft fork, where you would explicitly say, we are rejecting their block. And then you would have Core would actually be technically forking off. Not Core, but the non-forking nodes would be rejecting. It would be the ones forking off. So they're technically correct there. And I got to give them, like, that is how it all works. I think the conviction, though, in the futures market kind of says everything, though, because you can post a lot, you can engage on social media, you can go on a bunch of podcasts, you can do a bunch of talking, you could write a BIP, you could do a mailing post, you can do 10,000 things. But when it comes time to an actual disagreement, the futures market is actually the mechanism that would help miners understand. So miners can only mine on one blockchain at a time. They can't have their ASIC double mine. Like they can only run the work on one chain. So the miners need to have some sort of pricing signal to understand which chain would be economically viable for them to mine. And that's where the futures market comes in. You could even, in theory, stop them from forking if they see that it's not worth anything to them. The lack of conviction of anyone willing to engage in a trustless on-chain atomic bet that there is no counterparty, there is no rugging, like there is no like custodial risk. It is truly trustless. Their lack of willingness to engage in that is one of those things I think is kind of like calling, it's a calling of a bluff, really. So do I think they're going to fork? I do. I think they're going to. Will it be successful in the longer run of things? To be seen. And like you could have two independent chains that just kind of hang out and coexist. That's possible, but I don't know if that'll be sustained.
I mean, also like we have some past precedents of this, right? Like in terms of like, if this actually ends up in a full-on chain split, like ultimately the market decides then, right? And people vote with their feet, they vote with their economic energy. And like, that's why Bitcoin Cash is worth jack shit. Relative to Bitcoin. That's why Bitcoin Satoshi's vision, Craig Wright's vision is worth jack shit, like a fork of a fork. Like this is what happens. People will make a decision, and it just seems like, I mean, I don't know. I don't think this is going away. And again, I'm not trying to. I don't want to belittle anyone's feelings on this, because obviously there are a lot of people that I respect, very, very deeply, and consider good friends, that are on both sides of this, right? Like, this is it's weird to see this being used as this strange litmus test for like, what kind of Bitcoiner are you? Are you a real Bitcoiner? Are you one of us? Or, are you one of them? And I just think that this is like a false framing. I don't know where you sit on that.
Yeah. I mean, if you couldn't tell, I like to have fun. The way I would frame it and distill it down is pleb slop versus dev slop has been the way it's been rhetorically framed. Rod Palmer at the Bugle came up with the term pleb slop, and then immediately right after, dev slop became the counter retort. And so there is just fundamental disagreements for how Bitcoin should work among the participants. And normally we have these guardrails called consensus. I would say that having been on the side that didn't believe filters were effective for years now, I've said that you would have to do a fork to change this. So in that sense, I welcome the more productive conversation, because the filters were never going to actually end and stop these things. And we can actually have a productive conversation of a consensus change. Even if I disagree with the consensus change in premise, at least it's a more consistent, like, productive path rather than where the discourse was previously. My general rule is I don't, if someone's gonna, in good faith, talk with me and like have a conversation, like, then we can go back and forth all day. And there's plenty of people who I've disagreed with. I could do that. It's being just called a liar, wrong, like thief, like scammer. It's just like, okay, like, we're not having a real conversation anymore. So, all you can do really is laugh in response.
Yeah, or giggle. But I think this is the frustrating thing, is that, like, I have very publicly said, I just don't update my node with any regularity. Like, I just leave it. But I also think that, what the filterer side is saying is just like, I understand their moral or ethical argument. It's just not grounded in any sort of reality. And right. like two things can be true. You can be correct that things are bad, but you could be incorrect that what you're doing has any meaningful impact on them. And I think that's where this disconnect really comes down to. And, honestly, just like calling people who share the same consensus rules as you shitcoiners, I just think is like, there are a lot of real shitcoiners out there doing real shitcoining. Like, remember when we used to just troll them? Like, let's get back to trolling the actual shitcoiners. Let's get back to trolling the central banks. Let's get back to trolling the government. We don't need to be the revolutionaries who are putting each other in the guillotine right now for perceived, blasphemy. Like, it just gets rather tiresome, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a purity spiral, right? You basically, it's an in-group attack versus an out-group attack. And I think Michael Bitstein has this really great talk from BitBlock Boom. I think it was 2022 about like rhetoric and like when you have conversations with in-group versus out-group participants, like no coiner, like have fun staying poor versus like having good faith interpretations inside. And to me, from my opinion, would be that one group has now like reduced the group size definition to a subset of people who are in the Bitcoin tent. And that is where a lot of like I would say the escalatory tension and fighting and rhetoric comes from.
I think that's fair to say. Like, just making the tent smaller and smaller and smaller. And it's like, if you're not completely with us and completely bought in, then you must in fact be against us. And now, you are my mortal enemy, and anything you say can and will be used against you when we go and complain to daddy government. It's also just like a kind of a strange thing to just see this like this almost like this, regulate me harder, daddy kind of mentality, which is just like, if that's what you're doing, like perhaps you've missed the larger point about why we're here. Like we're not here to ask for permission from the government or to to build things that are compliant. It's like the things will be built later on. People can figure out, and there are a lot of great people doing great work to figure out, like folks at BPI. We're going to be talking to one of them next. It's ZACK Shapiro doing amazing work.
ZACK's on next.
Yeah, he's coming on next. But like people to go back and then say, look here, how can we make sure that we're not going to have the the long hammer of the law come down on Bitcoiners? We're seeing that already. Like open source software developers are under attack. The Samurai, we just saw the sentencing, 5 years, $250,000 fine for one of the Samurai wallet devs. This is horrible. And the last thing we should be doing is encouraging the government to crack down even more on people simply for running a different node implementation than you do. First of all, that's just a ridiculous premise. Like that for a number of reasons that we don't have to enumerate. And then second, like why is that your go-to? Why is your go-to to basically beg for statist intervention? I don't know, Rob. The mind, it boggles right now.
That's right. Yeah, it's very unfortunate because I've heard in different contexts from different people They're reaching out to actors in the space and also people associated with government to try and legally coerce to move the consensus along in this direction. And that's just a very bad spot for the Bitcoin protocol to be. And it would be a capturing of the protocol if consensus is now enforced by writing to your local congressman or someone at the Justice Department to try and like make some changes. It's a very bad spot to be, and it shouldn't be celebrated, and it should be seen as an attack. It should not be something that we should be seeing as self-defense by effectively asking for permission to run the software.
Yeah, it's honestly just kind of shocking. And then again, it comes back to the meme. Like, I think there's going to be a bit of a come to Jesus moment. And I mean no disrespect by using that particular phraseology to anybody on the side. Never mind. Anyway, like the realization, like, are we the baddies? Like, is this, oh shoot, we've been a bit hoodwinked. I don't know. Maybe there is never one. Maybe this is a schism that stays in perpetuity in Bitcoin. I kind of doubt it. I think we'll see probably a lot of rage quits after this. I think that's probably, for those, I've not been around for very long, but from what I've been told by people who have been around for a long time, rage quits are coming, and they will be very full of rage. I don't know if you're preparing for that as well.
It is a time-honored tradition in Bitcoin to have prominent people that are developers in Bitcoin to quit. Gavin Andreessen, who used to be the lead maintainer just after Satoshi. You also, Jeff Garzik left after the block size wars. You also have Mike Hearn, who wrote a whole blog post about how Bitcoin was over, and it was like Bitcoin was at like $1,000. Like, he was like, I'm done with the project. It's all over from here. So it is, if anything, you could view it as a bull market sacrifice. Is that we just need a couple of big names to rage quit, and that's going to be part of the medic feed for the next leg up.
Yeah. It's just the phoenix has to burn into ashes for it to rise again, right? Yeah, we'll see. Well, Rob, we're going to cut to a quick commercial break. Then we're going to be right back. We're going to talk about you've still got another 30 minutes. Is that right?
Good to go.
Fantastic. Oh wow, we've got so many more giggles to be had, so many more rages to be quit, so many more prediction markets to explore. Maybe I will place a bet against Rob live on air, put my money where someone else's mouth is. We'll be right back. We'll see you in just a couple minutes. Stay tuned.
The future of capital markets runs on Bitcoin. Introducing Roxum, the first ever exchange where Bitcoiners can trade treasury stocks entirely in BTC. Get exposure to top Bitcoin holding companies like MicroStrategy and Metaplanet, priced in Bitcoin from the start. No fiat, no middlemen. This is what financial freedom looks like. Early access now live at roxum.com/treasuries. Built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners.
So, tell us about your furry friend here. What's his name?
Oh, this? This is Bitcoin.
Bitcoin?
It's not just a cat, he's family.
Quite a name, and I must say, looks quite pampered.
Oh, absolutely. Bitcoin deserves nothing but the best. He's my little prince.
But with such a valuable pet, aren't you afraid of losing him?
Losing Bitcoin? No, it never happened before, so it's not something I worry about. Excuse me for a moment. Bitcoin, stay here, right?
Bitcoin, no! Bitcoin, come on, little buddy, Bitcoin, I need you. Don't go.
In a world far away. Nah, just kidding. This story begins in this world. It all started in 1460 in Antwerp, when the first commodities exchange was created, but the real transformation came in 1602, when the Amsterdam Stock Exchange was founded. Considered the oldest in the world, it was the first to trade financial assets. Over the years, Britain expanded its colonial and maritime influence, and the British pound sterling overtook the Dutch guilder in the market. Thus, the London Stock Exchange became the financial centre of the world. The 20th century came, and the world got into some trouble. But shortly after World War II, the Bretton Woods Agreement established the dollar as the world's primary reserve currency, and the center of the planet moved to Wall Street. Today, we're traveling at the speed of light towards a new age, an era shaped by the consolidation of Bitcoin as the currency that will define the future of the markets. We present Roxum, a new Bitcoin-denominated market that allows trading all sorts of securities, commodities, derivatives, options, and anything you can imagine. Roxum, rock-solid markets.
Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Welcome back to the Breaking Bit. I'm still not entirely sold on that show name, guys. Might change it to Vibe Check. I'm not sure yet, but what I am sure of is that my name is Walker America, and I am here with Rob Hamilton. We just came back from a break. We were both giggling extensively in the break, even though we couldn't hear each other's microphone. I just imagined that that's what we were doing together. I know I was. We've been talking prediction markets. We've been talking, let's say, about the Bitcoin drama du jour, and whether or not people are willing to put their money where their mouth is. Now, one thing I do want to comment on here a little bit, and we will just bring this up right now, is dun dun dun. Found it. All right, here is the prediction market that is. I mean, wow, this seems like there's pretty strong odds here. Will Shinobi say or write the word retard or a derivative of it by the end of the year? What did you made this market as well, Rob?
I made this market.
Can I ask what would be considered a derivative of the word?
So if you scroll down, there's a description. I included regarded, artard, retarded, any sort of like, similar-ish sounding. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. All right. And it seems that, I mean, there's fairly strong consensus on this.
Well, you can actually scroll down. You can see Shinobi has entered the market and has started betting no to believe on himself.
Oh, wow.
See, yeah, so that's Shinobi. He's placing bets to bet on himself because he believes in himself.
Do you think he can actually wait? But he's betting no. That he's not going to say
he won't do it. He has faith in himself.
Does he have that kind of self-control?
The market says a 26% chance that he'll actually pull it off.
I mean, do we know it's the real Shinobi? Have we cryptographically validated?
I have confirmed that it's the real Shinobi. So there's been 145,000 sats that have been placed on this market. Okay. So there's we're coming up on like $160 on this market trying to figure out what's going to happen.
I mean, I just like place a bet here. Okay. So how does this work? I've never done one of these. Rob, we're doing Walker America's first ever prediction market bet live here on Roxum TV. What a time.
So what you're seeing here is the shares pay out based on, so if you buy a no share, each share is worth 1 sat if the market resolves to no.
Okay.
So what you're seeing here is to get 100 sat payout, it will cost you 25 sats. So you will and then so as you increase the amount of shares, the price goes up because you're buying more of them, and you also kind of move the market a bit, right?
Right. Well, then I'm gonna go ahead and
you're gonna put $3 to win $10. Yeah, 3,600 sats to win 10,000 sats.
Oh wait, 3,000. Oh, I wanted to put 30. No.
The market moves a lot. So
the market.
So this is
I'll keep my bet a little tighter to start.
Yeah. So you can pick whoever sets the market, like I did. You have to post the liquidity, and I have to lock that up. So I had to lock up like 10,000 sats to do this. If you make a bigger market, you can allow there to be less slippage. So for example, the one we were talking about earlier, had the. You should give it a second. There you go. So you pay your Lightning invoice.
I've got this signed in another browser, but I realized I didn't have my my trusty Albi extension on this one. So it looks like I'm going to have to do this the old-fashioned way with the QR code.
I'll pay it for you.
No, don't you dare. Don't you dare.
I just bought your shares. I just bought them for you. They're yours. They're on your account.
You sneaky son of a gun. Okay, well.
There you go. Boom. And look, the market just moved. Now it's back to 50%. It's because you put a bet and moved the market. You just moved the market.
I've never moved a market before. I've never been like an insider before capable of moving markets. So like this is kind of like an exhilarating feeling now. This is exhilarating.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now if Shinobi lasts until January 1st of the next year, you will get 10,000 sats for the 3,600 sats I put up.
That's not, I mean, give that 30 years. That's you're buying me a house, Rob. I'm gonna have to, we're gonna have to maybe go in on it together. Like I'll have to somehow thank you for that. So I mean, this is hilarious to me, right? And
the whole thing is hilarious. That's why it's so funny. Like the whole thing is hilarious.
It's good to have fun. We should have fun. Like, what is the point of separating money and state, of subverting the state's power structures if we're not going to be able to giggle a little bit along the way? What's the point?
I have a personal theory just on like internet cultural movements. It's not like 100% bulletproof, but it's a good heuristic. Is the side that's having more fun tends to win. Because like to be rigid and I'm so angry and so serious, like has an emotional and psychological coordination cost among others. If you're having fun, you're just going to do it anyway. So I made a couple of other markets because what happened was actually the first one, when will the soft fork code be available? I've been asking for when the code would actually become available for us to review this BIP 444 consensus change. Like the code is not public. And I asked Mechanic and he said, why? Are you going to make a prediction market on it? And I said, that's a great idea. Let me go make a prediction market on it. So I made another prediction market and it's currently between now and the end of the year. You can pick which dates within what date range. There's a 73% chance right now in the prediction market that it's going to actually between today and November
next week.
And the next week, we're actually going to see the code.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So you can go ahead and select which, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Boy, there's so much fun to be had here. I've got a slightly different twist on that because I agree with what you said. Mine is more so about like which. So it's the idea that whichever side of a debate has the best, most concise memes, and the best memes are necessarily the most concise. Like they have the most mimetic potential. Yes. And if you don't understand what I mean, you're not on the right side. I'm just kidding because it's not about sides, guys. But if to break this down. The side that has the best memes generally has the most truth on their side. If your memes have to be too complicated, this is why they say the left can't meme. It's because and if it's not rocket science.
So to your point, I've now started replying. People will continue debating with me, and I have the Drake meme where he's like this, and it says debate me, and then it says bet me. Because just bet me now. There's no more debating. Just bet me. Like I'm giving you so much odds. There was another one. I made a prediction market on will Luke or Mechanic legitimize a prediction market as being fair before the end of the year. That's the Shrug one right there. Currently priced at 13%. There's like 180,000 sats. All Luke and Mechanic have to do is say, hey, this active prediction market is legitimate on the 444 activation. You can go place your futures market prediction there. So the market doesn't believe they're even going to acknowledge a futures market, which goes to my point. The futures market is actually a way of deflating their kind of momentum because no one actually thinks if people aren't actually willing to so back in the 2017, the block size war, I put my whole stack on the line. I put my whole stack on the line to sell Bitcoin Cash and buy more Bitcoin. And if no one's even willing to wager one Bitcoin with me in a trustless bet, it really speaks to where is the conviction of the market.
So actually, I would love to talk about that a little bit because I was at that time I had bought a couple of Litecoins because I didn't realize you could buy a fraction of a Bitcoin and I didn't have very much money lying around. And so then this is why I Bitcoin podcast because I have been there. I have been the idiot who didn't realize you could buy a fraction of Bitcoin and I bought some terrible shitcoin instead. Thank you, Coinbase. Yep. But no, it's really all my fault. It's my fault for being an idiot, not taking the time to study. But can you talk a little bit about actually how, the mechanics of how that worked when the fork happened, when the chain split happened? Because a lot of people just weren't there for it. And if they haven't read about this, they just may not actually understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't remember the exact block height, but the Bitcoin Cash team picked a block height and said, on this block height, we're going to enforce new rules, right? And what happened is anyone who was holding Bitcoin in self-custody, that's an important piece here. Anyone who held Bitcoin in self-custody, the moment that chain split, you now have dual copies of the ledger. So if you have one Bitcoin before the split and the split happens, you now have one Bitcoin on this fork, on this split of the chain and on this split, right? So what you had to do back then was you had to go download a Bitcoin Cash wallet and move the funds to an exchange. And then when it was in an exchange, sell it and then buy Bitcoin with it and then move it out. And then you would just get more Bitcoin. So if you have like, here's Bitcoin Cash, you would go over here, move your funds to an exchange from your cold storage. You would sweep out the fund, you would sell the Bitcoin Cash, buy Bitcoin. And then from the exchange, you would withdraw and put it into the BTC, the Bitcoin chain. And that was available to anyone who held self-custody. And here's the thing with self-custody, eventually Coinbase made it available so that if you had one Bitcoin at Coinbase, they would let you have one Bitcoin at Bitcoin Cash. But it was months later and the price had already gone down like 80%. So most of the gains were people that were holding it in self-custody making the trade.
So that's super interesting, and it reminds me of Lynn Alden and Steve Lee and OX Ren had a great report. You probably
the BCAP.
Yep.
Bitcoin consensus. Yeah.
Real and I think actually if a lot of people, more people read that report or listened to the incredible Bitcoin podcast episode I did with them, you would have a lot less questions right now because you would.
I'm making a note right now.
Yeah,
I haven't listened to that podcast.
It's an excellent one. I mean, those are it was Lynn and Steve on there. They're both wealths of knowledge, and I think it's really important because they analyzed this from a lot of different angles, right? And they looked at this not in just this singular way, but in a holistic way of what does it actually mean? Who are the actual players in this? And it even gets into the not in the weeds so much, but so to speak, gets in the weeds about like, look, influencers also play a role. Everybody plays a role. The miners play a role. The economic nodes play a role. Don't know what an economic node is? You should figure out, and you will in the event of a chain split. But like a lot of people haven't gone that far, and that's also okay. You don't necessarily have to go deep down the rabbit hole. The best thing you can do with Bitcoin is nothing. I think that advice was given by American Hodl, or Hodl as he identifies, many times. Like just do nothing, and you'll be okay. And sadly, I think there is a desire that is rooted in good faith and rooted in one's heart being in the right place to want to do something. But again, often it's like don't just do something, sit there. Like, just, man, you may get yourself hurt. You may end up rage quitting. And, we need more people in Bitcoin, and we need more people starting Bitcoin podcasts. So I don't want to see those rage quits, but they may be coming. There may be nothing we can do to stop them, Rob.
It's a very common tactic if someone's like phishing you or trying to like attacking you, trying to get you. They want you to move fast, right? They want like right now it's super urgent. And I would agree with that like you almost never, when you're talking about moving your Bitcoin or making a big commitment, that is not like I need to emergency go do something right now, right? That's usually just not like you're not in the right state. You need time to reflect on it and talk to other people like for this kind of stuff. You don't want to be just gun-ho running off and making a decision like that.
No, and actually, I forget who I was talking about this recently, but I brought up that exact same thing. Like the tactic that people use in phishing emails is, act right now. And because if you don't do something right this second, something really, really terrible is going to happen. So you click the link or, send us this information or whatever. Like this is it's a really, just a really predictable tactic. And, again, I'm not one to call people bad actors. I think that's there's been plenty of that going on. And so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, I think there are a lot of hearts in the right place. There are a lot of cases where just simply, maybe people have not thought through hard enough the actual long-term game theory of this. And that's okay. Like, but man, at least you can bet on it now, if you have, if your conviction is that strong, like it's kind of, it's amazing. It's like really, put your money where your mouth is. Like, let's see it. Yeah. And if you believe it and you're right, you make a bunch of sats. Like, that's kind of cool.
You make a lot of sats. You get to take my sats too. They're not just anyone's sats. You get to take my sats if I'm wrong. And there's a lot of people who think I'm dumb and wrong and I'm too condescending and rude. Like, have at it. The giggling upsets a lot of people. A lot of people just don't like the giggling. And so if you want to, like, I'll still giggle even if I lose because it's going to be really funny if it actually does activate, it is going to be hilarious in its own way. So like, I am neutrally hedged. I will be giggling no matter the outcome.
I love that. That's the pull quote that I needed here to really run this story. Rob, we've got 15 minutes left here, and we've talked about a lot of stuff around this particular debate that shall not be specifically named. I think we've mainly avoided actually naming the blank v blank so far, which is pretty good. I'm trying not to just avoid those words. The silent K, I call it. But I would love to talk about some of the other work you do when you're not giggling and making prediction markets, which is Anchor Watch and this idea of Bitcoin insurance. So maybe we could talk about that a little bit. You're wearing the hat right now. I've got one of your hats. You guys give out a lot of cool free swag. My wife was stopped by airport security for having one of your wrench attack bottle openers. So let's just say they let us through with it, but it was a close one. But yeah, I mean, where do you guys see yourselves kind of positioned in terms of where we're at in the market right now? It's like, it seems to be an appropriate time for it as we have more institutional adoption, more large individuals coming into the market. How are you looking at this? What are you guys focusing on? How's it going?
Yeah, I think we're in a really great spot. For those who aren't familiar, anchor watch is actually an old nautical term for the crew of sailors who watch the ship at night when it's at anchor. And we offer Bitcoin insurance, custody, and insurance. We are a Lloyd's of London cover holder, meaning that when you get a policy with us, it is not kind of some omnibus policy like with an exchange and the exchange is insured. You and your Bitcoin directly have an insurance policy, a Lloyd's of London policy. And I think for a lot, especially just the continual focus on institutional adoption, as well as people that are thinking about Bitcoin as a long-term asset, transferring risk on like the most important things in your life, I think just conceptually makes sense. Like you insure your home. I think like we're putting a lot of work and we're going to be launching some new products by come the end of the year with different vault variants for people to be able to have more ways they can be able to custody and manage their Bitcoin. We're also going to be kicking off uninsured support as well. There'll be cold card support coming in like very soon. So we're spinning a lot of plates to get that all turned on, but it's all been really exciting. For the institutional adoption narrative, I just think fundamentally, if you are a fiduciary and you're leaving your funds at a traditional large custodian, follow those terms and conditions and read through all of those things, because those large custodians, you don't have an insurance policy. The custodian does, and the custodian has an insurance policy for a fraction of the amount that they actually manage as an asset. So I think over time we were kind of skating to where the puck was going, because no one even like Bitcoin and insurance like 3 years ago when we started the company was kind of seen as weird, and why would you need that? And now there's several Bitcoin insurance focused startups that have now popped up, like working on the insurance carrier side. There's been a lot more attention and interest to it. I think a lot more people understand in general that it's a valuable part of just having insurance is just foundational financial services. And whether you're doing loans, if you're doing custody, all of these things, insurance is just a very strong synergistic thing that you want to be able to have as part of that package of keeping your Bitcoin safe if you're using an intermediary.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we tend to, in the Bitcoin space, I think it's very easy to get into this mentality of like anything that's remotely associated with the fiat world must be garbage. But it's like there's a reason things like insurance exist, and they existed long before the era of the fiat standard. They existed on sound money standards, actually, and so like this is like an important tool. Not fiat ruins everything, as many a man has said, but like insurance on a Bitcoin standard, I think, starts to actually make a lot more sense, and insurance on your Bitcoin starts to make a lot more sense, I think, for a lot of people. And especially I think it's one of the biggest things, I know just for myself personally and for a lot of folks I talk to, is just like you're just worried about screwing something up, like at the end of the day, or you're worried about a $5 wrench attack, you're worried about a kidnapping, whatever it might be. And like, for anyone listening, there's no possible way for you to get mine because it's in a geographically distributed massive multi-sig, so suck it. Also, I live in the United States of America, and we have guns here, lots of them, which is a fantastic thing. Go USA. But you all that can be true, and you could still screw something up. And so I feel like it's especially as a wider base of perhaps less technologically savvy people get into Bitcoin, it feels like that's like a base that is going to be really kind of moving your way. Is that what you guys are looking at as well? Or do you cater more to kind of like the OGs who might have like a massive stack and they want to, have some protection on that stack?
Yeah. I mean, we're open to business for retail and commercial. Our minimum policy size is $250,000 up to $100 million per person or entity. Right. So there's already a wide range of people we're able to service with those kind of ranges of limits. It's interesting to your point, talking about like, it's a very common thing I've heard is like insurance is fiat. And it's you had my co-founder Becca on your podcast maybe a month or two ago, and you guys did a whole fun backstory on the background of insurance. I just usually cut off and say, insurance has been around in its modern form since the 1600s, and there's way longer forms, historical forms of insurance. It way predates fiat currency. I think many people, maybe people in Bitcoin who are more skeptical of the current financial system, only have their main interactions with insurance are like government compelled. You must have car insurance if you have a car in the United States. You must have health insurance if you're if you're an employer, like you must buy. And if you don't, you have to go to the public market option, which is a government controlled market, right? If you have a mortgage, you must get homeowners insurance. That one's interesting because you must have it because the bank is the one holding the value of the house. And they're not, when they give you a mortgage, they're not doing it for the land. They're doing it assuming that they have like a 5-bedroom house with 3 bathrooms, right? Like that's actually what they're underwriting. And so if the house were to burn down in a fire, the bank doesn't want to be impaired with property that's way worth less than the value of the remaining mortgage, right? And so I think I can understand why people's very common day-to-day interactions is this like government compelled form. But it's also like a very just anarcho-capitalist Austrian economics like way of transferring risk in ways that you would, in a world with less government involvement, you would have people with capital to backstop in the event things go wrong. Right. And it's the idea of putting skin in the game is the way to actually kind of incentivize better actions among everyone. And I think that's just kind of part of the evolution of Bitcoin. That the original thesis Becca and I had starting Anchorwatch was Bitcoin will continue to succeed and grow and enter and get more global dominance and the price will go up. There will be an insurance market that exists. There's no way this is going to be a $10 asset and there's no insurance, right? There's maybe in total today $5 billion of crypto coverage in insurance, and Bitcoin alone is worth over 2 trillion, right? So like the market's already offside, let alone the upside of as Bitcoin continues to gain adoption and price. It's just something that we saw as like a very straightforward, large market opportunity size to be able to go pursue.
No, I think it's really cool, and I do. I've looked more, this history of insurance, and it's actually it's quite fascinating. And then it starts to make sense why you guys, have nautical terminology on this. Like a lot of it came back to, insuring these ocean-faring vessels that were making these really dangerous journeys and being able to spread that risk around. And it's yet another rabbit hole. Bitcoin exposes you, and Bitcoin companies expose you to so many different rabbit holes. My biggest problem is I have not enough hours in the day to explore them all. And that's why, you podcast with people so that you can have them explain to you a little bit and then later go and, do your own research. But it's fascinating stuff. And I'm curious, so we've got you for another couple minutes here, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to come on. It's been a blast. Would love just your general thoughts. Okay. You're running a Bitcoin company. You see a different side of the industry, right, than somebody who's just stacking sats. I'd love to just kind of know broadly what you think about where we're at in terms of sentiment and the adoption cycle more broadly. Like what are you seeing? I was talking with Thorn about this just before you came on. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of fear out there. There's some blood in the streets. If you were leveraged, or certainly if you are in crypto and, quote crypto and not in Bitcoin, you are feeling terrible right now, as you should. You should have just stacked sats. But like Bitcoin wise, what are you seeing? What are you feeling? What is your vibe of the market as it exists today? Like, what are you feeling, man?
Let's see. I've been in Bitcoin since 2013. So the price volatility, I actually don't feel until this time around in like a bull market cycle where I felt totally at zen, right? With this understanding that it's very common in a bull market for the price to puke 30% on its way, marching up higher and higher and higher. I think fundamentally, I'm not much of a macro podcaster. That's definitely not where my strengths are. My casual observation of it would be, I think a combination of ETF adoption and treasury companies has kind of shifted around, pulled market demand forward a bit of kind of getting people to get in. I haven't seen much retail. I haven't had all of my friends from high school and college texting me about the Bitcoin price. It hasn't happened at all. Even when it ran up to the all time, no one cared, right? So I think that's kind of changed the market structure fundamentally. I'm at a zen place understanding that maybe it goes down to 80K, but in 2 years from now, I see it being much higher, right? So trying to not get too lost in the day-to-day trading of it. And more thinking about the longer term value proposition. Government's going to keep on printing money. We're going to keep on having deficit spending. We're going to continue devaluing the dollar. That's the original value prop of what got me into Bitcoin, over a decade ago. I don't see those fundamentals having changed at all. I don't see there being compelling alternatives that have stepped up. And I even think things like the gold price having a recent really crazy run up is kind of just like a market laggard of just like more people are understanding this trade. And that doesn't really detract away from Bitcoin. I think it actually just brings more people aware to the problem of the inflation trade, or the great debasement trade is what they're calling it, right? For like the suit coiners out there. It's just legitimizing that like the core thesis is still there, and right, and Bitcoin is a better money, so that it's a whole new wave of adopters that are skeptical of the current financial structure, and they'll make their way over soon enough.
Yeah, it is interesting to see these terms like, you know, the debasement trade and all of that just really penetrating the common vernacular of the suit coiners and everyone. It's like, you know, things that Bitcoiners talk about ad nauseum seem to seep their way in. But, you know, it's because Bitcoiners, we are the mimetic zeitgeist, right? We are the tip of that mimetic spear. And I think that that's a really important thing. We need to make sure we maintain that. And the more time we spend, you know, memeing and counter memeing each other internally, while we should do that, and it is very healthy, we need to remember that we are the shepherds of that mimetic fire, and we need to make sure we spread it far and wide. Lest we forget our place, you know, in ushering in this bright orange future. I don't know, and in the meantime, just, you know, place some bets, right?
Yeah. Let's bet on this. I've been pulling a lot of uncut gems gifts because it's just so good. Like, I mean, just like, let's bet on this, or this is how I win. It's just like it's
that
fun.
movie made
like,
me anxious for days. Not many things make me anxious. That movie, after I was just like, that was a good film, but man, I feel bad after that. I don't
the
like
whole
that.
roller coaster. The whole roller coaster. They did an amazing job with the soundtrack, the pacing, just the dialogue. Like, it's just constantly moving, going and going and going and going. It's a very interesting thing. Like, there's been like, call it like gambling, like being fiat. And at the end of the day, I just view it as having conviction in a position, and you just make a bet. I have a belief, you have a belief, let's make a market. And I view that as more of a signal, like a price signal, right? Like truth, like the willingness and ability to engage in agreements to show conviction, I just think is a much more powerful indicator than doing long debate threads, especially nowadays. And like over the past year with the proliferation of LLMs, half the time I don't even know if I'm talking to a human.
It's so bad, dude.
So like why am I going to get invested because some random person with an AI generated profile picture is saying things that I disagree with? I just say, all right, let's do a bet. And like their LLM tokens can't find like the lightning QR code to like place a bet on the market. You know what I mean? So like it's such an amazing way of just like filtering out noise.
Dude, it is crazy just to dwell on that for a moment. I feel like and I thought that Elon was trying to really limit the amount of like, you know, bots and everything. That's been the claim for a while, to limit the amount of AI dudes and ladies that are floating around there. But it just seems like it's gotten worse and worse and worse. And it just gets so obvious. Like when you've got like Jeff 420 69 123 77 XY, and they're just making this weirdly verbose, but just like kind of empty statements. You're like, oh,
yeah,
hot. Like, hot.
What I'll do is I'll look at the profile, and they may have like one or two like follower overlap, and then I scroll through like their 10 most recent tweets, and they haven't tweeted in like 3 months, and the ones they've never mentioned Bitcoin before they interacted with me. I'm like, you're not a real person. Mute. Like, just mute. And I don't block people. I just mute. Like, just, they can yell into the ether. Just like, I'm not going to give them the satisfaction of looking at the block. So either reply with like a laughing emoji or just mute. And just like and the asymmetry there. That's another just like internet debate rhetoric thing too. Like the LLMs will always like just massively outpace you with being able to put crap out there. So just compress it all down to like one emoji in a response and mute and move on.
Well, I think like the LLM bots really just exponentially accentuate the bullshit asymmetry principle, like because they can churn out so much more bullshit. Like bullshit there was already an asymmetric principle there, right? It takes way more to refute bullshit than it does to create bullshit. But now, like when you can just have 10,000 bots creating AI generated bullshit, like it becomes exponentially more difficult to refute it. So I agree. Give them a little giggling, laughing face. Give them a mute and move on, and tell them to bet. Once the agents can start placing bets, though, then we're in interesting territory. I'm looking forward to that.
Well, this is how I win, because I would love for them to dump money into any of these markets that I've set up. I'm waiting for it. I'm looking for the person who has conviction in their beliefs. I'm looking for them. I haven't found them yet. If you're listening, please DM me. We can set up a trustless market. Like, I am ready to go. Like, please give me the action, because I would love to make some free Bitcoin.
I love it. You heard it here first, folks. If you're an AI agent or an actual human being, you can give Rob your Bitcoin. You send him one, he sends you two back, maybe. Depends if you're right or wrong. But Rob, thank you so much. We're running right up here on the end of time. Appreciate you joining. Appreciate the perspective. Thanks for placing that bet for me. But now I'm going to have to go place a few of my own, I think. We're going to cut to a commercial break. When we come back, we have ZACK SHAPIRO. He's the head of policy at the Bitcoin Policy Institute. We're going to be talking about the recent SAMOURAI wallet developer sentencing, which was pretty brutal, and what it means for open source developers everywhere. Rob, thank you so much for joining. Really great having you. We'll have to do it again sometime on this show or the Bitcoin podcast, either way, but appreciate your time. And thanks for everyone for watching. We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial. See you soon.
The future of capital markets runs on Bitcoin. Introducing Roxum, the first ever exchange where Bitcoiners can trade treasury stocks entirely in BTC. Get exposure to top Bitcoin holding companies like MicroStrategy and Metaplanet, priced in Bitcoin from the start. No fiat, no middlemen. This is what financial freedom looks like. Early access now live at roxum.com/treasuries. Built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners.
So, tell us about your furry friend here. What's his name?
Oh, this? This is Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
It's not just a cat, he's family.
Quite a name, and I must say, looks quite pampered.
Oh, absolutely. Bitcoin deserves nothing but the best. He's my little prince.
But with such a valuable pet, aren't you afraid of losing him?
Losing Bitcoin? No, it never happened before, so it's not something I worry about. Excuse me for a moment. Bitcoin, stay here, right?
Bitcoin, no! Bitcoin, come on, little buddy, Bitcoin, I need you. Don't go.
In a world far away. Nah, just kidding. This story begins in this world. It all started in 1460 in Antwerp, when the first commodities exchange was created, but the real transformation came in 1602, when the Amsterdam Stock Exchange was founded. Considered the oldest in the world, it was the first to trade financial assets. Over the years, Britain expanded its colonial and maritime influence, and the British pound sterling overtook the Dutch guilder in the market. Thus, the London Stock Exchange became the financial centre of the world. The 20th century came, and the world got into some trouble. But shortly after World War II, the Bretton Woods Agreement established the dollar as the world's primary reserve currency, and the center of the planet moved to Wall Street. Today, we're traveling at the speed of light towards a new age, an era shaped by the consolidation of Bitcoin as the currency that will define the future of the markets. We present Roxum, a new Bitcoin-denominated market that allows trading all sorts of securities, commodities, derivatives, options, and anything you can imagine. Roxum, rock-solid markets.
Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Hello and welcome back to the Breaking Bit. I am Walker America. Thank you for joining. We just had Rob Hamilton on here. And next up, I would like to welcome to the stage ZACK SHAPIRO. ZACK is the head of policy at the Bitcoin Policy Institute. If you are not familiar with BPI, they do incredible work. They work directly with our state overlords in Washington, D.C., and generally do a ton of advocacy for Bitcoin, for freedom technologies, and for the developers who create those freedom tech tools. So ZACK, welcome. How you doing?
Thanks for having me. Doing pretty well.
Yeah, it's I wanted to have you on here today because just yesterday we saw Keon Rodriguez was sentenced to 5 years in prison, $250,000 fine. He is one of the Samurai wallet developers. You've been really on top of this case for quite some time. You've done a lot of work on this case. I think you're the perfect person to talk to about it. Can we start with maybe just like your initial impression of this sentencing and kind of, how did you react to that when the news was first coming out yesterday?
Look, I mean, I think this is disappointing. I think this sentence is unjust. I think Keone and Bill are not actually guilty of this crime to which they've both pled guilty. That being said, the 5-year sentence, I think, was totally expected and maybe even inevitable. As part of the guilty plea, both of the defendants in this case, the Samurai wallet developers, agreed that they would not challenge their sentence. They would not appeal their sentence if it was 5 years or less, which is the maximum allowed by law for the crime that they pled guilty to, which is unlicensed money transmission. In exchange, the government would not pursue the other sort of scarier charge of conspiracy to commit money laundering, for which they could have each faced 20 years in prison. And so this was a calculated deal that they reached to make sure they didn't end up spending a big chunk of their lives behind bars.
I mean, and one can understand that. It just still seems like I understand their perspective. I certainly would not want to, especially not for writing, open source code, which just seems rather ridiculous. But it is just kind of insane. I think at a higher level that these laws get wielded as just this cudgel against open source developers. And like this, there's multiple other cases ongoing or that have culminated recently. I mean, were you expecting to see any sort of a different, let's say, I guess, attitude about this from the administration? How, the current presidential administration, the Trump administration, how much of a say do they actually have in any of this? I mean, do you think there's any potential pardons on the horizon? Or are you guys looking at that at all?
Yes. So look, I think to give some credit to the administration, I think they are in general taking a different approach towards non-custodial tools and privacy tools in general. We've had a speech from someone high up at the DOJ saying that they are not going to bring cases like this in the future. We've famously had a memorandum setting out the administration's policy on these types of prosecutions, saying that they are not going to do stuff like this going forward, called the Blanche memo from the Deputy Attorney General. But the government did not decide to wade too deeply into this case in particular, or the very similar Tornado Cash case, which is disappointing. I think that is the wrong call. But the relevant federal prosecutors, including the person who's the head prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, where this case is being brought, have the view that this falls outside of what the Blanche memo says, that there were sort of special facts in these cases that go beyond just writing software, and that, in fact, they were providing services more than just releasing a tool. Now, factually, I think that's wrong. But I would say spiritually, this is against what the Trump administration said that they were going to do, and I'd wish they'd been more involved. That being said, I think there is still the opportunity for a pardon here. I think there is an effort underway, and definitely the Bitcoin community can be helpful by making noise about this and showing that this is a priority. I think it's one thing to pardon CZ. I think if you really want to get the crypto community and the Bitcoin community behind the administration in the midterms, pardoning the developers in the Samurai Wallet and Tornado Cash cases would really go a long way and would show a lot of good faith and understanding. But I think it is incumbent upon us to sort of make noise about that and make sure that they understand.
No, I completely agree there, and I would encourage everyone to make as much noise as you can. And just a question for you, kind of on the legal side of this, because I'm not a legal scholar by any means. I'm just a humble podcaster trying to understand these things. So when it comes to what he actually pled, or was charged with the unlicensed money laundering, right? That was what money transmitting, right? That was what the eventual charge was.
Yeah, the charge that they pled guilty to was conspiracy to engage in unlicensed money transmission. There are, even just based on the name of that charge, there are two sort of deeply Orwellian issues. The first is the term unlicensed. Originally, there were sort of two theories the government had as to why this was unlicensed money transmission. They ended up dropping one of them in response to the Blanche memo that we just talked about, which was any argument that they needed to have a license for money transmission by any federal or state authority, or that they had to register with FinCEN as a money service business. Is usually when you think of unlicensed, those are the licenses that you're talking about. And by the way, we learned in this case that FinCEN, the body that does this licensing, they didn't think that the defendants needed a license. The theory that the government used actually has nothing to do with that now. The remaining theory is just that defendants knowingly transmitted funds that they knew were the proceeds of crime. There's despite the fact that license is in the title of the charge, there is no license that the government is alleging that the defendants even needed at this point. Now, the second issue is the word transmission. The defendants pled guilty to unlicensed money transmission, but they didn't transmit anyone's money. And if you, in the transcript from the guilty pleas, when you plead guilty to a crime, you have to give what's called an allocution, which is to say in your own words the conduct you did, like what are the things that you did that make you guilty of the crime. And actually both Keone and Bill were very careful to accurately describe how Samurai Wallet worked in a way that, if you're listening closely and you understand the technology, made very clear that they were not transmitting anyone's money. Their users were transmitting funds using their software. And specifically, in the way their tools work, primarily it was a non-custodial coin join. The users were just engaging in a collaborative transaction with one another. And yes, they were using Samurai Wallet's software to coordinate themselves, the coordinator, which is sort of like a digital bulletin board to find other people that wanted to engage in collaborative transactions with one another. But it is the users, I think in all cases of non-custodial technology, and not the software developers who build it, that are the money transmitters in question.
And that's just the thing. It doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever. At no point were they in custody of the funds. It's not like they were doing a gold exchange business where they were given illicit gold that had been used in a crime, and then that gold was then sold for dollars to someone. Like no. They never actually touched the funds. They wrote non-custodial software. They weren't in charge of those funds at any time, and yet they are being treated like these criminals. I mean, it's all just kind of rich too, because this is against the backdrop of, like, just as an example, JP Morgan Chase paying a fine of a couple $100 million for engaging or for supporting the sex trafficking operations of Jeffrey Epstein. Like this, they admitted it. They paid a giant fine for it. Nobody went to jail for that. Nobody went to jail for enabling the sex trafficking of minors by one of the most prolific blackmailers, in modern history. Like, I mean, even like the DOJ case, I've got this in front of me. JP Morgan agreed to pay $290 million to settle litigation alleging it assisted Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking operation. But for them, it's a cost of doing business. Keone and Bill don't have $290 million to throw. If they did, they would probably just still be walking free, right? And to me, it's just such a fundamental abuse of justice. And it's kind of just gross and disappointing. And frankly, I think just wrong that we're at this place in America. Like, I just don't see, how long does it take for this to get better? Because clearly something is fundamentally broken when you can have people enabling sex trafficking at a massive, massive scale and people writing open source code. And the people writing open source code are the ones who go to jail. I just think that's fucked up.
Yeah, well, I think I agree with you. It doesn't make sense. And so I think you have to ask, all right, what is this about? What is the motivation to bring a case like this? And why is it that these software developers were made to plead guilty to this charge? I think the answer to that is ultimately relatively simple. If you're a federal prosecutor, your job is to get convictions, right? And you probably, you don't see yourself as a bad person. You're trying to stop what you see as a real problem of money laundering. But in the law, different crimes have different mental state, or what are called mens rea requirements, and some are more strict than others. And in order to convict someone of money laundering, which is, I think, what they really thought the defendants did here, you have to have what's called an intentional mental state, meaning you did something on purpose. Whereas the money transmission charge has a lower, what's called a knowledge mens rea. And the easiest way to sort of explain what this means to people that are not sort of steeped in the legal system is if you're a Uber driver and someone gets in the back of your car and you say, where are you headed? And they say, I'm on my way to rob a bank. You're not guilty of a crime just for dropping them off at the location. You knew when you were driving them that you were driving them to rob a bank, but you didn't do that on purpose. You weren't trying to help them rob a bank. Whereas the guy on the other side, the getaway driver that drives them away from robbing a bank so that they don't get in trouble, is guilty of a crime. They're aiding and abetting the bank robbery because they are on purpose helping someone do the crime. And so in order to be convicted of money laundering, which the government did pursue against the defendants here, but agreed to drop, you have to prove they intended to help criminals launder funds. But there just wasn't a lot of evidence of that, right? There was some silly statements on Twitter about welcome, Russian oligarchs, but that to me seems more like a joke than, a statement of intent. Or a real desire to have Russian oligarchs on the platform. There were some statements in the defendant's sort of pitch decks about what segments of their business were in the black or gray market. But again, I think that's really much more about knowledge, right? If you're running a privacy tool, you probably know that some percentage of your users are going to be people who need privacy for law enforcement reasons. But proving what was in their head, that they wanted to help criminals, that they built this technology to help criminals, would have been very hard to prove. And so the government is using these money transmission charges basically as a money laundering light concept. It's sort of like getting Al Capone for tax evasion instead of for all the other stuff that he did. And it's really a tool of convenience. And this case was brought during the Biden administration. I don't think this case was brought to kill crypto, but I don't think that they cared so much about sort of the negative consequences of this, right? That startups would leave the country, which we saw with Wasabi, we saw with Phoenix. They didn't really care about the chilling effect. And then I think the current administration thinks that through the Blanche memo that they've solved some of the chilling effect, but they don't really need to go in and mess with these cases in particular. So in terms of like, where do we go from here? I don't think we can trust sort of prosecutors to really care about this issue and caring about the technical distinction between custodial and non-custodial. If they can get convictions by pushing people into guilty pleas like they did in Samurai Wallet, if they can get convictions at trial for the same offense like they did in Tornado Cash, I just think this is a tool they're going to want to use. And so the solution here, and I think we need to pursue these both in parallel, one is to get a law passed that clarifies this issue so that it doesn't happen again. And there just so happens to be exactly that law that was passed through Congress and is in front of the Senate. It's called the Clarity Act, and it would end definitively any future prosecutions like this. It would clarify that unless you have unilateral and total control of other people's money, you are not a money transmitter and you cannot be prosecuted for that. So it's very important to get that passed. And by the way, it's important for that to get passed intact and not have a deal where Ripple gives money to the Democrats and then they, do the securities law part of that bill to legalize ICOs, but then they throw the developer protections out the window. We need the developer protections and clarity to get through. And then also failing that, and in the meantime, we need to try and win some court cases where other federal judges can understand this issue and help create case law, help get to decisions that push back against the sort of bad judge rulings we've seen come out of SDNY.
I mean, so if that Clarity Act is passed as it is and is intact, you're saying like, would they then be able to run a full set of appeals against these cases that have already gone through? Like, would there, or how does that? I don't
think it applies retroactively, but it would mean definitively, even if we get a different administration, even if God forbid we were to get a President Elizabeth Warren, you couldn't bring a case like that.
Please don't even joke about that. Okay, so and it doesn't. So again, not a legal scholar here. It doesn't give them. Does it give them any sort of ground to stand on for an appeal to say, look, now this law has been passed, it makes what I was charged with and accused of essentially not a crime. Is there any way for them to at least get some sort of early release treatment or something like that?
Well, I do think it might make it politically easier for them to get pardons.
Okay,
I think if you were to say, listen, Congress and the Senate passed a law and the president signed into law clarifying that this is what the Bank Secrecy Act means, and these guys did not violate the Bank Secrecy Act, and yes, retroactively, like some judge previously understood it differently, and based on facing 20 years in prison for a different crime, I think that would make it a lot more palatable to say these guys deserve a pardon instead of the narrative that the administration should be worried about, which is why are we letting money launderers out of prison? So I think it would be sort of helpful for the pardon or commutation bank shot, but the Clarity Act is important for forward-looking cases for other developers that are working on similar or other non-custodial technologies more than it is specifically for bill and county.
Okay. Okay. I mean, yeah, this is obviously something I'm thinking about these guys because it's obviously like they're right in the thick of it right now. But going forward, like this is something that you want to have, no pun intended, clarity on. Like you want this to be clear. You don't want developers to feel that they are threatened for writing open source software in what is purportedly the freest country in the world. Like this just seems like such a blatant contradiction and frankly just anti-American. Like ultimately, like it's just shocking me that this isn't, open source software in this regard isn't somehow protected under the First Amendment, even as freedom of speech. Is that like I don't know. Again, not a legal scholar here, so just trying to wrap my brain around it, but it just really doesn't pass like basic muster or logic, it seems.
Yep. And I think there's a lot of frustration here. I mean, there is a case about this that an activist brought called Llewellyn versus Garland. I think it's now Llewellyn versus Bondi, because you sue the attorney general when you try and bring these cases, that is trying to enshrine some of these principles. In the Tornado Cash case, I think Roman Storm is going to appeal his conviction and make some of these arguments. Unfortunately, when you plead guilty, you just have fewer options in terms of your appeals. That's what you sign up for. And this is not a statement, I think, as shown by the defense allocution, it's not a statement that Keone and Bill necessarily think that they are truly guilty of the thing that they pled guilty to. I think this is the human story of we can't roll the dice with a very hostile judge and who knows what kind of jury when the consequence might be decades in prison.
Yeah, and especially I think that when families are involved like that, I cannot imagine going through that. Is there, I mean, from the BPI side, what is your main focus right now as it relates to this? I know you obviously have your hands in a lot of different things. You're pushing on a lot of different levers or trying to. Is this kind of the one that's top of mind for most folks in the team, or are there other kind of avenues that you guys are taking right now that are similar?
Well, I mean, this is definitely the biggest sort of policy issue for us. And our other big policy issue is the strategic Bitcoin reserve. But really, when you talk to folks at BPI, why we care about the SBR, it's really not about the sort of number go up aspect. I mean, of course, that's nice, but the sort of game theory of this, the reason why we care about the SBR is to align incentives so stuff like this doesn't happen in the future, right? As with everyone, you come to care about Bitcoin and sort of the freedom money aspects of Bitcoin after you get in because of the price. And we think sort of once the government has a bag, it'll be incentivized to take this more seriously and look at the sort of more serious policy issues closely. So definitely we're looking at this. We, all systems go on the Clarity Act is sort of the most important law to pass. We've got the peer-to-peer rights fund as a way to, have a war chest to protect other developers that, this might happen to in the future. And then definitely, we're talking to folks about potentially a pardon, but that's something that we could use a lot more grassroots support on.
Yeah, and I'm curious too, as it relates to the Clarity Act. Obviously, this still has one more legislature to make it through. What are you guys thinking right now in terms of the realistic chances? What are the big like if you had to steelman the case against this, or I should say, steelman the case of any detractors of this bill? What's the big opposition that this may be facing right now? Is it purely a partisan thing because now this pro-Bitcoin, pro-crypto stance is being viewed as a pro-Trump stance, or is it something deeper than that?
I think it really is mostly a partisan issue. I mean, I think there are sort of three things. One is just the partisan not wanting to give a win to something that seems like a Trump phenomena to some of the Democrats. There are certain Democrats in the Senate, like Elizabeth Warren, who are just anti-crypto and see this is the biggest lever to hit the industry with. And then there's sort of the like national security hawk types. I'm thinking specifically here of Senator Warner, whose staff, they drafted the sort of democratic principles on how to regulate DeFi. And DeFi is shorthand for them for non-custodial tools. And that got leaked and it was just horrific. It basically undid all of the developer protections that are currently in Clarity. It would give the administration just a huge amount of leverage to decide what is custodial, what is not, based on some vague notion of decentralization that doesn't even apply to things like a coin join. The question is not, was the coin join decentralized, whatever that means. It's, did anyone have control to private keys or user funds? And so, we're sort of working all of the political angles here. There, various parts of the industry are being really helpful and sort of lobbying on this. And then there are other parts of the industry, you could imagine who this is really not their issue, and they're just frustrated that this is holding up the the sort of Howey test securities law issue that they care about, so that their token can trade more freely among retail.
Yeah, I mean, there is it seems quite a large disparity between that cohort of people, the Ripple cohort, and the Bitcoin side of things. That's why I'm very glad that we have folks like you at BPI doing this incredible work, because I know it's not easy. And I only spent one day on the Hill, and wow, it was challenging to say the least. And so you guys are out there.
It was eye-opening, yeah.
Yeah, it was eye-opening indeed. Yes. And it was both disheartening and heartening at the same time, because you see how, I think, and you guys see this every day, but for me at least, a fresh set of eyes coming in, you see how entrenched certain opinions are, how little time these people have to actually pay attention to what they view as your little thing. And then at the same time, when you got somebody who was actually willing to listen and actually knew more than you thought and was surprisingly pro Bitcoin, you kind of took a step back and you said, wow, okay, Bitcoiners are everywhere. You're never quite sure. So that was the heartening part. But yeah, I think we had talked about it too. There were some interesting takeaways from that day as well.
Yeah. I will say, sort of towards that mission, we had a really big recent win. We were able to hire Connor Brown from Senator Lumma's offices. I don't know if he's been on your show, but he's terrific and is our new head of strategy. And sort of his superpower is he's been on the inside for a while now, and is really helping us figure out, okay, what is we've developed our policy positions, we've developed our talking points. What are the dominoes that actually need to fall to make these things happen on sort of the government side?
Yeah, no, I have not had Connor on yet, but I was just messaging with him and David Zell, one of your fearless leaders, and I think we're going to do a dual show with them together. So that should be great. Awesome. He's obviously done incredible work, and that was a huge snag. Got a chance to meet him very briefly in Nashville when he was with Senator Lummis, and clearly, again, very mission aligned, very vision aligned, and it's great to see Bitcoiners again. It's like it comes back to that idea that you may not care about politics, but politics cares about you, right? And not everybody needs to pay attention to this, but I'm sure as hell glad that you folks are, because as I think I've said to you and a few other folks in the team, I would rather have a government full of Senator Lummis's than Senator Elizabeth Warren's. Like if the government's going to be there, I would rather them have Senator Lummis's mentality than Senator Warren's, because one is very open and one is very closed and destructive and clearly antagonistic. So yeah, very grateful for the work that you guys do.
Thanks. Yeah, and look, at the highest level, right, we only get one shot at Bitcoin reshaping the monetary system and society, and many of us live in the current global superpower, and it's going to navigate it one way or the other. And so we need that to happen as smoothly and best as possible for all of our sakes.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And yeah, again, we've got one shot. Let's make sure we do it right. Appreciate the work that you guys are doing, and appreciate you taking the time today. I hope people will follow this case, the Samurai wallet dev case, continuing to follow it closely, because it's not over yet. Do we know, just before we wrap up, do we know when the next when Bill's sentencing is going to be?
I think it just got moved back to late November, like the 19th.
Okay. Yeah, I hope people do pay attention to that and make some noise. Because this is just genuinely insane. And if you care about basic freedoms, you should really care about the ability of people to write open source code that doesn't actually touch anyone's funds and doesn't custody them. Like that should not be a crime. Open source software is not a crime. So appreciate the work you guys do, Zach. I'm glad we have people like you fighting for folks like Keone and Bill, and for all the other open source developers who work out there. Thank you so much. Encourage people to check out btcpolicy.org, correct, is your website? Yep,
that is our website. And p2prights.org if you want to donate specifically to the fund for open source devs.
Fantastic. Well, Zach, thank you so much. Appreciate your time here. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, and then we will be back in a bit. Zach, take care, and keep up the great work.
Thanks so much for having me.
The future of capital markets runs on Bitcoin. Introducing Roxum, the first ever exchange where Bitcoiners can trade treasury stocks entirely in BTC. Get exposure to top Bitcoin holding companies like MicroStrategy and Metaplanet, priced in Bitcoin from the start. No fiat, no middlemen. This is what financial freedom looks like. Early access now live at roxum.com/treasuries. Built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners.
So, tell us about your furry friend here. What's his name?
Oh, this? This is Bitcoin.
Bitcoin,
It's not just a cat, he's family.
quite a name, and I must say looks quite pampered.
Oh, absolutely. Bitcoin deserves nothing but the best. He's my little prince.
But with such a valuable pet, aren't you afraid of losing him?
Losing Bitcoin. No, it never happened before, so it's not something I worry about. Excuse me for a moment. Bitcoin, stay here, right?
Bitcoin, no! Bitcoin, come on, little buddy. Bitcoin, I need you. Don't go.
In a world far away. Nah, just kidding. This story begins in this world. It all started in 1460 in Antwerp, when the first commodities exchange was created, but the real transformation came in 1602, when the Amsterdam Stock Exchange was founded. Considered the oldest in the world, it was the first to trade financial assets. Over the years, Britain expanded its colonial and maritime influence, and the British pound sterling overtook the Dutch guilder in the market. Thus, the London Stock Exchange became the financial centre of the world. The 20th century came, and the world got into some trouble. But shortly after World War II, the Bretton Woods Agreement established the dollar as the world's primary reserve currency, and the center of the planet moved to Wall Street. Today, we're traveling at the speed of light towards a new age, an era shaped by the consolidation of Bitcoin as the currency that will define the future of the markets. We present Roxum, a new Bitcoin-denominated market that allows trading all sorts of securities, commodities, derivatives, options, and anything you can imagine. Roxum, rock-solid markets.
Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Welcome back, everyone. We just got done with Alex Thorn, then we had Rob Hamilton and Zach Shapiro of BPI. We now have the pleasure of welcoming to the stage, hello there, Count BTC Nolan, a fellow Roxum host here. How you guys doing? Where are you guys at right now?
We're loving our life in Buenos Aires at LibitConf, the oldest Bitcoin event in the world, the Grand Slam of Bitcoin events. I'm happy to be here. It's my second time here. The last time I was here, I got to hang out with Andreas Antonopoulos. This time, I get to hang out with the Bitcoin libertarian. He's not mic'd up right now. The setup here is a bit guerrilla, so I'm going to hand him the mic later, but he's waving and he's giving me cues. We get to hear from him in a second. He does the Bitcoin libertarian Twitter feed that has price feed and lots of interesting information. He's got the Bruce Lee character on the avatar, so I'm sure he's around. He's a big fan of yours, so we'll be able to hear all from him in a minute.
Amazing. Well, glad to have you here, Nolan, and Bitcoin Libertarian. Great to see you as well. I have not been able to make it to LibitConf before, and I very much need to. It's been on my list. Haven't been able to swing it, but we'll have to do it again soon. How long is it?
You've been a busy family man, and you've been traveling, so we get it.
What was actually the original founding date of the conference? Wow. So it's been a very long time. I mean, that's just wild.
So my Wi-Fi, I got to warn you about some of the technical things here.
Okay.
On the broadcast. The Wi-Fi was strong, but I've seen it bounce out a couple times, so maybe not be patient. And just let us know if the audio is a bit weird in the chat. But it should be fine.
Yeah, it actually just got a little bit better there. So that's good. You had a little lag, and now I think we should be good to go. So I wanted to bring you up here. I'm glad you got a chance to join. I appreciate you joining from afar. One of the things I think that I always appreciate your perspective on is the news du jour, because you always tend to have a very interesting and unique perspective on things that are happening. And one of the things that has just happened is we just had a a pseudo-socialist, pseudo-communist, wannabe totalitarian guy elected as mayor of New York City, purportedly the financial hub of the world. Purportedly a lot of things, but right now it appears that New York has fallen prey to the totalitarian temptation. I would love to maybe just get your thoughts on this. Is this just one of those things where we should actually just say, yes, this is inevitable and this was going to happen, and you know what, let New York clean itself from the inside out? Or what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes Bitcoin more and more vital to the current administration because, let's be honest, Mamdani is perfectly casting issues that most others have. So it's a real thing. Affordability is not just excellent branding, it's excellent communication, and he's very good at communicating that message. And I think he's diagnosed the problem that Bitcoin is recognized. Now, the problem with communism, of course, is it exists in a kind of linguistic world. It exists in language. The fiat is language-based money, of course. And so, just like we heard him say the other day, there's no problem that bigger government can't solve, and no problem that's too small and big and whatever. It was really crazy stuff, right? And unrecognizable to what Bitcoiners are building in the future. So it's not, I think having him there actually forces Trump onto getting rid of this side quest for the Nobel Prize and whatever's going on in Venezuela or the Middle East. And Trump really does need to focus on winning the economic battle, because that really is all that matters in America. And so, in my estimation, a lot of Republicans are glad this is happening. I would be very cautious about that. I understand what they're saying, let them have the communism and they'll learn. Well, that's exactly how this stuff goes. What I do like about it, though, is it's forcing everyone onto the same racetrack. And that racetrack is to fix affordability. And of course, as a Bitcoiner, we know the answer. The money is broken. And so this plays into all of Trump's strengths in a lot of ways and could help him focus on what really matters, which is inflation. Now let's go back to the demographics, right? We saw that the boomers did come out for Mamdani, and the boomers did not come out for Donald Trump. So a big part of affordability is each of the generations and cohorts' economic interests are going to be recognized. And I don't think Trump owes anything to the boomers. And I don't think he thinks anything about their wealth being based on real estate and all of that stuff. So I think at this point, Trump is going to have to really take a close eye at that entire part of the economy and let it go, really let it go. So I think this puts us into the frame that most of us have been waiting for in Bitcoin, that Republican and Democrat are now officially dead. We've moved into a new axis in American politics, which is communism versus Bitcoin. And that's exactly the timeline we thought was going to happen by now, and we're on schedule. So we still have to win the fight. It's not so simple as that, right? So Mamdani, I don't want to ever underestimate this guy. This is a master communicator. He is 100% diagnosed that young people are worried about. His solutions are retarded. And so we have no choice but to win the fight of, making life affordable for young people, showing them the hope and possibility, because this is what happens every single time. We've seen the whole story play out a bunch of times. So I don't think it's like people will learn. People will learn. If you don't supply the answers economically, they're not going to learn shit. It's not an intellectual problem. It's a lifestyle, quality of life problem. And so hopefully this refocuses Trump. Most people who love Trump want Trump to be America first, and part of that America first mandate is Bitcoin reserve. It's understanding that Bitcoin should be at the center of the American economy, and that real estate has no business being there. So we're in a position now, I think, where the actual fault lines of American politics are going to be very good for us Bitcoiners. And we're at the last stage. We just have to come around the last turn, bring this thing home, which is fix the economy, fix the money. And we should be good. Mamdani's weakness is it's all language, it's all ideas. It's not really going to make people's lives better. But nevertheless, the branding is very strong, and the talking points on affordability hit right into the heart and soul of most young Americans, especially New Yorkers. So New York has either the chance to be way ahead of a curve, it often is that, right? New York is sort of an advanced indicator of what's going on, and if that's the case, then it will go the way Bob Donnie has predicted. So it's up to us. It's our own personal responsibility now as Bitcoiners, as people who promoted Trump and wanted Trump to win and continue to support Trump and believe this is going to work out for most Bitcoiners. So we're at a point now where it's exactly what we asked for. We can't get mad about getting what we asked for. We just have to continue and make sure we hold Trump accountable. We continue to encourage Trump. We continue to support what he's trying to do. They get caught up in little other weird side quests about bombing drug dealers. I don't care what China bomb says about drug dealers, right? But indeed, that would be one of the side quests as well. So, I think this is what we asked for. We got what we asked for. We've always got to be happy to get what we asked for. American politics are now past the way the Bitcoiners wanted to see for a long time. We're not fighting against sentimental Democrats. We're fighting against straight Democrats. It's an appropriate adversary.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, and you touched on this, is that I think a lot of the posturing and messaging from the let's say the right wing, the Republican Party around Zoran was around, look, he's somehow gonna usher in the Intifada, and he's this like Muslim extremist, all these things that are just like kind of easily disprovable. Like in reality, he's just has dumb communist policy. You don't have to go further than that. The policies are just idiotic. They've been proven to be idiotic and violently detrimental to the lives of hundreds of millions of people. Communism has killed hundreds of millions of people. Like massive death tolls because of communism. These policies never worked. To be espousing them in the year 2025 in a New York or any electoral race is patently just insane. And at the end of the day, it's like you shouldn't need to go farther than that. You should be able to basically tell people and appeal to logic and say, look, here's why this is just stupid. It's been stupid every time it's been tried. It kills people every time it's been tried. But these appeals to logic just don't seem to work, Nolan.
No, that's what I mean. You can appeal to logic. This is a put up or shut up moment for Bitcoiners, especially those Bitcoiners who embrace MAGA. You really have to solve the affordability crisis. What Trump promised in Bitcoin Nashville, you're going to say, Mr. President, no more energy, stop with the energy. You're going to say more energy. That is what we have to do in America. We need more electricity. We need more oil. We're going to drill, baby, drill. We're going to turn that into Bitcoin. Wipe out all of these Wall Street financial engineers. We're going to shift what Americans desire, what Americans are afraid of in a very subtle way, but it's about action. It's about modeling behavior. It's about, I saw yesterday what we saw with Elon Musk. Like, Elon Musk is sort of one of these great examples of modeling behavior. He's not selling you a big linguistic construct about if and then, and you'll feel better and it'll work out. He's saying, no, we build this, we get that. We do this, we get that. Bitcoiners have to systematically do that. We have to use, of course, memetics work, but memetics are more modeling. They're not linguistic constructs. They're not a bunch of language strung together to create some kind of logical loop that will persuade you. That doesn't work. It simply doesn't work. If people were logical, Bitcoin would have been adopted widely a long time ago, especially by economists. That never happens. They're not going to listen. They have everything to lose. And so we're dealing with subconscious, and the only way to communicate that is with modeling behavior and doing it correctly from the start. We have to make Americans prosperous. We have to make Americans have hope and increase and solve the affordability crisis. So I really do commend Bardani on isolating that priority, because it doesn't seem like any other politician wants to say it out loud. Now it's up to us to deliver on it. I don't think he can ever deliver on it. So his ideas indeed become stupid, but he has properly diagnosed the problem. And now it's up to us to model that behavior, to show that Bitcoiners are capable of solving the affordability crisis, that Bitcoin is capable of solving the affordability crisis. Beyond Bitcoin, Bitcoin itself is capable of solving the affordability crisis. And if we don't solve that, then we've got a communist future coming up. So it's up to us now, and that's what we asked for. And so No crying in baseball, no crying in politics, no crying in Bitcoin. Gotta solve it. Got to get rid of the things that are holding America down. The things that are holding me down right now are I gotta be on stage. So I'm gonna hand it over to the Bitcoin Libertarian here. Let me pause it while we do the audio changeover.
Yeah, you're good. I'll be ranting to myself while you're doing the changeover. Nolan, thanks so much for joining. I know you'll kill it up there on stage. Great to see you, man.
Thanks a ton. Take it easy, man.
All right. So yeah, I think Nolan brings up a ton of great points there, and this is actually kind of the fundamental thing that we need to grapple with is people genuinely they genuinely are having a very hard time living right now. Like there's a reason that people will vote for socialist and communist policies. It's because the socialists and communists promise them everything, even though they have no way to pay for it, even though it never works, even though like their ideas on their face are just logically inconsistent and downright. They promise them the moon, and they'll promise that they'll pay for the moon with the taxes of the bourgeoisie. But listen, it just never works. It never works anytime. So Bitcoin Libertarian, I see that you're mic'd up now. Good to see you, man. How you doing? Yeah, what's your take on all of this, all of these shenanigans?
First of all, thank you for having me. I'm helping Nolan with his. Now he's going to speak. First of all, I want to tell you that I've been in Lugano, and I liked so much the presentation, or you and your wife as MC. Was amazing, and well, now I'm here enjoying Argentina, La Bitcoin, my first time here, even though I'm Argentinian, but I live in Hong Kong, so it's my first time here as an attendee, as a speaker, so I'm enjoying a lot. And I didn't listen a little bit of what he was talking about. Apparently, you were talking about socialism, mad money, and all the things that are going now in the United States.
Yeah, we were broadly talking about Zoran Mandami in the New York mayoral election, the fact that he won, and the fact that basically the policies that he's espousing are just very blatantly stupid. But so much of this is made into this like. This cultural thing or whatever it might be, but it's a shame that you can't appeal to people's logic, because logically socialist and communist policies are just stupid. They're just illogical, and they end in the deaths of tens and hundreds of millions of people every single time. And we have this evidence from the past 100 years. This isn't theoretical. This isn't academic. This is reality. People have lived this. People have died it, and now you have these same ideas being proposed again and again and again, and it's just insane. But no appeal to logic seems to make a difference, because we have to acknowledge that people are hurting, because this fiat system is so broken, because the incentives are so broken. People are hurting, and if you promise them we're going to freeze the rent, we're going to make buses free, we're going to have the state control or the city control grocery stores, and we're going to keep the prices low in there. Well, that sounds great. I would like that. I would like free stuff. I would like free money. Like, of course, when people are desperate and somebody promises them free money, they're going to say yes, and they're going to vote for some dipshit. And like, that's the sad reality.
Yes, it reminds me what happened. As you said, that the world is going to trend down in the last 100 years. I want to read what our president today says, that we, the Argentinians, come from the future. We already live in this dystopic future that the destroy of the currency brings. And when I was listening to Magmani's speech and promises, it reminds me 10, 20 years ago, when the Kirchners started doing the same thing in Argentina. They were promising free money, they were promising free food to the people, but there is nothing free. Someone has to pay. And they started with printing money. And they took the country in a big problem of inflation. I think in 2023, the inflation was around 250% a year when Milei took power. So that's what the socialist measures do. The country, every time I come back, I see that the country is being deteriorated, and these policies are the policies that destroy Argentina. Argentina, at the beginning of the 20th century, was one of the top 5 countries in the world by GDP. I don't know if it was by GDP or by GDP per capita, but was one of the biggest countries in the world. And in 100 years, these policies, the same policies that Mamani is doing, or it's at least promising to earn votes, destroyed Argentina. That's why our president, everywhere he goes, is preaching that. Don't do it. Don't open the door to the socialism, because it shows like, oh, the free money, free food, free transportation, free child care. But then you are like destroying the future of your country. Probably for a few years it worked, but in the future you will destroy the future of your country.
Yeah, I mean, this is the truth. It's all so very short-sighted, and it ultimately comes down to people just playing politics, right? When people are desperate and you promise them that you're going to give them the solution, which in this case is, it won't cost so much to live anymore. Right now, it costs too much to live. You cannot afford to live. We'll make it affordable to live. We'll make it actually free in many cases for you to do these things. Of course, you can see why people will fall for this, right? But again, as you pointed out, this is the same playbook. This is the same playbook every time. My wife is from Romania. Her father, defected communism. Like he says this all the time. He's been saying it actually for some years. And each year that goes by, he looks more and more correct. He says, Walker, I came to America and I loved America. That's why I came here. Like I became an American. The longer I'm here now, these past few years, it starts to give me, flashbacks to how things were during communism, to the things that they said to us during communism, the language they used, the promises they made, the threats they made. It all kind of repeats itself. And it's just shocking to me that this communist playbook is used over and over and over and over again. And if you've spent 5 minutes reading history, you don't even have to read history. Ask ChatGPT to tell you. Ask ChatGPT, because that's what you ask for everything, right? Ask ChatGPT to tell you how many people died because of communism and communist policies. It's in the hundreds of millions, right? It's an insane amount. Whether it be through outright political violence and murder, or whether it be through starvation, whether it be through incidents related to communist bureaucracy, the list goes on and on. This is fundamentally a destructive ideology. Giving people free shit doesn't work because there is no such thing as free shit. Everything has a cost. Someone has to pay that cost. Just because the government is giving you something, the government is not a productive institution. The government creates absolutely nothing. All the government can do is extract value from the productive people, from the companies, from the individuals. That's all the government can do. It is not productive. So when the government promises to give you something, what it's promising to do is to take more from somebody else. And these people say, well, we need to tax the rich, tax the billionaires, tax all of this, tax the people that are creating the jobs. And if you dare to question that and say, that actually, that doesn't really make much sense. For most of these people, all of their wealth is tied up in the value of their stock that they built from a company that was worth nothing in the summer. If they don't have, $6 billion in US dollars lying around, they've got a lot of stock. And granted, they can borrow against that and do all these things. The point being, it's like, anytime the government promises free shit, what that means is they are going to steal from the productive people and give to the non-productive people. Now, it is not, it is no one's fault but the cantillionaires that the money printer just runs, ad nauseum forever. But that being said, punishing a certain cohort of society because of how warped things are at the very top, because the money is broken, punishing one side that is productive just doesn't work. If it did work, communism would have worked every time, but it doesn't work. And communism has not worked any single time. Like, you want the best example? South Korea versus North Korea. Look at the aerial shots at night. One side is full of lights. The other side is not. Like, I think that's one of the most perfect pictures that shows the difference between a pseudo-capitalist and a communist society. I won't even call them full capitalists, but they're relative to North Korea, they certainly are. But I've been ranting now. I'd love your take. I mean, what does it take to wake people up to the fact that there's no such thing as a free lunch? Like, they even teach you there's no such thing as a free lunch in Keynesian economics. Even the Keynesians know this, but people don't listen, I guess.
Yes, I think that first of all, when you point that your wife's father that is from Romania and he loves capitalism, through all my life I've been traveling since I'm 44 now, and I've been traveling since I was 20. And the biggest anti-communist people I met in the world were people that used to live in communist countries. And the biggest anti-populist people are the people that I like us. We didn't live in a communist country, but we lived through these populist regimes like the Kirchners, like Lula, that they say, okay, we are going to give free food, we are going to give free money, we are going to give free transportation. What did you get the money? From where did you get the money? Because someone has to pay. And they say, okay, we are going to tax the rich. Okay, they tax the rich. And the rich have means or have like intelligence, like accountability. They can go to another country. They have weapons to fight against the state. So what they do when they don't have the money from the taxes, they print more money. And they end up hurting the lowest part of the population, because as we all know, especially we the Bitcoiners, that inflation hurts the poorest people. Because middle class, if we are middle class, we can fight against inflation. We can, here in Argentina, we buy US dollars and put under the mattress. We can buy Bitcoin. We can buy stocks. But imagine a person that lives paycheck by paycheck. When inflation hits, one day he can afford until 30, the next month until 29, and they have to make a decision. Either I consume less or I consume less quality. And this is a problem for the future generation. So people don't understand. It's so funny. I was listening to Manmani speech, and there was a progressive show here in Argentina, and they are talking about Manmani like the new god of the United States. And he said, yeah, we must, the guy from the show said, we must tax the rich. And he said, imagine Elon Musk, he has 300 billion US dollars. Why we cannot take 200 million? And I say, stupid. He doesn't have 300 million in cash. So that's they don't understand economics. If you're left wing, it's because you don't understand economics. If you understand economics, you cannot believe in that thing. It's like believing in Santa Claus.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, and this is ultimately the frustrating thing about this, right? It's frustrating because they say these same tired tropes, these same cliches, tax the rich, right? AOC wearing her, her ball gown to the Met Gala with tax the rich on it. And, wow, how cool, how trendy, how whatever. I'd say Natalie Brunell wore it better when she, with her Fix the Money dress. That was outstanding. 1,000 times better. And actually a message with some meaning versus tax the rich, which just means nothing. Like the rich, the quote rich, already in the United States anyway, already paid the vast overwhelming majority of income taxes, for example, right? This is just the reality. I think like the bottom 45% in the United States pay no federal income tax at all. Like, so already, like, it's kind of ridiculous. Now, if you bring up those statistics, you're called any number of names, but this is the reality, right? And statistics don't care about your feelings, right? You should buck up and learn to deal with that. But just the absurdity of all of this is that it's been tried before. We know it fails. It doesn't pass any basic logical test of, would this work? Is this something that's a viable solution? No, of course it's not. And again, but this isn't academic. This isn't philosophical. This isn't a thought experiment. This has been tested with real people's lives and real people's blood and real people's heartache and hardship for 100 years, over 100 years now. And it fails every time. And so when you see this, I think again that Zoran Manmani, he's not the disease, right? He's not the disease. Like, let's not give him that much credit. He's a symptom of the disease. The disease is that the money is broken. We know this, right? Bitcoiners know this. More and more people, what gives me a little bit of hope, I think more and more people are starting to figure this out. They're starting to realize that, hey, something's not right, something's broken, and everybody keeps telling me that prices going up is just the result of greedy corporations or or billionaires' fault. But you know what? If you have just like a couple of brain cells to rub together, you realize that just doesn't make any sense. And so you start to wonder, well, maybe the problem's deeper. And then, I think COVID honestly woke up a lot of people to this, because when you get a check in the United States, a check sent to your door, and it's like, where did this money come from? Where did it come from? And this is why we need to meme our centralized cabal of bankers at the Federal Reserve into oblivion, because there are so many incredible sound bites of them saying, where does it come from? Do you just print it? We print it digitally. There's an infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve. All of these things, they tell you the truth. They tell you the truth because it's like that Big Short scene where it's like, why are they confessing? He's like, they're not confessing, they're bragging. Like, we have a centralized cabal of banker bureaucrats that believe they can control the price of money better than the free market. And I see all the time that the communists and the socialists, the neocom, whatever, the neocommunists, they love to claim, well, real communism has never been tried. We just have to do it right this time. Then we'll get it right. But the reality is that real capitalism has never been tried. And maybe actually we've gotten close. Maybe we've gotten pretty close. And in the modern era, I think we still are pretty close. However, the caveat is you can't have true capitalism when the money isn't free. And I don't mean free as in give it away. I mean free as in freedom. When the money is centrally controlled, when you have centrally planned money, money is the lifeblood. It's the baseline of the economy. So how can you have a truly capitalistic society when your money is centrally planned? By the way, one of Karl Marx's 10 different edicts that he put at the end of the Communist Manifesto, I think it's maybe number 4 or 5, don't quote me on it, but it was the idea that in order to usher in the communist utopia, one of the key things you needed was a centrally controlled credit system. You needed a central bank. Central banking is literally a communist, a communist idea, basically, because anything that's completely centralized appealed to the communists, right? The communists would not have liked the wildcat banking era and all these different things. They want consolidation of power. They want totalitarian control. And, again, this Zoran, he's a symptom of the disease. I don't even want to give him too much credit, because clearly he's been a skilled enough orator, where he's been like, he's not quite on Barack Obama's level. Like, I think if Zoran started, drone striking children in the Middle East like Barack Obama did, they wouldn't give him a Nobel Peace Prize like they did for Obama. Like, you got to be really good to get the Nobel Peace Prize while drone striking children in the Middle East. That really takes some skill. But I think Zoran could get close. I think he could just, a little artillery fire, and he might still be able to get a Nobel Peace Prize, while eating with his hands and pretending he's the man of the people when he's really just a theater kid masquerading as some sort of neo-communist. And in reality, he's really just a fucking idiot who doesn't understand how the world works, but wants to LARP and pretend like he does. But unfortunately, this isn't a LARP. This isn't live action role playing. This is the real world. And when you're the mayor of any city, especially New York City, your actions have consequences, and there will be consequences for the people of New York. And for that, I'm very sad. That's a terrible thing. But, sometimes you have to touch the fire to understand what it means to get burned. And people are going to get burned very hard. All right. I'm ranting again. Love to hear your thoughts.
Yes, I think that again, as I remember we are very Christina Kirchner was president for 8 years. I don't know if you know her. She was a very good speaker. She was speaking to the people. And now she's in jail because he stole from the government. But yes, I think that all these ideas, again, as I agree with you, with all when some socialist thing fails, they say it's not real communism. This is not real communism. In Cuba was not real communism. In USSR, no real communism. You know where there is no real communism? In China. And that's why China is so successful, because they are not communists at all. I live in Hong Kong. I crossed the border to China, and I can tell you that they are more capitalist than in the United States. So, and I think that I agree 100% with you, because I was talking about that today in one panel here in the conference, that we never had real capitalism. To have real capitalism, you need to have money that is separated from the state. And Friedrich Hayek said it. I'm an economist by formation, an Austrian economist, and when you study when I discovered Bitcoin, I said, oh, this is the missing piece of the puzzle for a real free and capitalist society. Until we don't have this kind of money, free money or like non-central bank money, we are not going to have a real capitalism. As, for example, Lawrence Lepard in his book, he talks about the problem not of the capitalism, of the chronic capitalism that we are living now. That governments printing money, giving money away, the friends of the government benefiting from this money printing. And also, Friedrich Hayek says, we are not going to have good money until we take the power of printing money from the government. But this is not going to happen from one day to the other. This is not going to be a revolution. It will start like small, until we take over. And this is what happened with Bitcoin.
Absolutely. We need to cut to a quick commercial break, and then we'll be right back. I'm not sure how long you can stick around, but I'll be here for another 15, 20 minutes at least after this. I think we've got a little bit more to talk about. We've got a little bit more to unpack. We've got a little bit more to ridicule when it comes to these communists who want to pretend as though they can, they can, let's say, take a shit that doesn't stink. In reality, all communist shit stinks. Pardon the expression. We will be right back after a quick commercial break. Stay tuned. I will be ranting about communism more in just a couple minutes. We'll be right back.
The future of capital markets runs on Bitcoin. Introducing Roxum, the first ever exchange where Bitcoiners can trade treasury stocks entirely in BTC. Get exposure to top Bitcoin holding companies like MicroStrategy and Metaplanet, priced in Bitcoin from the start. No fiat, no middlemen. This is what financial freedom looks like. Early access now live at roxum.com/treasuries. Built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners.
So, tell us about your furry friend here. What's his name?
Oh, this? This is Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
It's not just a cat, he's family.
Quite a name, and I must say, looks quite pampered.
Oh, absolutely. Bitcoin deserves nothing but the best. He's my little prince.
But with such a valuable pet, aren't you afraid of losing him?
Losing Bitcoin? No, it never happened before, so it's not something I worry about. Excuse me for a moment. Bitcoin, stay here, right?
Bitcoin, no! Bitcoin, come on, little buddy, Bitcoin, I need you, don't go!
In a world far away. Nah, just kidding. This story begins in this world. It all started in 1460 in Antwerp, when the first commodities exchange was created, but the real transformation came in 1602, when the Amsterdam Stock Exchange was founded. Considered the oldest in the world, it was the first to trade financial assets. Over the years, Britain expanded its colonial and maritime influence, and the British pound sterling overtook the Dutch guilder in the market. Thus, the London Stock Exchange became the financial centre of the world. The 20th century came, and the world got into some trouble. But shortly after World War II, the Bretton Woods Agreement established the dollar as the world's primary reserve currency, and the centre of the planet moved to Wall Street. Today, we're travelling at the speed of light towards a new age, an era shaped by the consolidation of Bitcoin as the currency that will define the future of the markets. We present Roxum, a new Bitcoin-denominated market that allows trading all sorts of securities, commodities, derivatives, options, and anything you can imagine. Roxum, rock-solid markets.
Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
right, welcome back, everyone. My name is Walker America. This is the Breaking Bit. I'm here with the Bitcoin libertarian who is currently at LaBitConf. How's it going down there, guys? We've been ranting and raving a little bit about communism, specifically as it relates to and was triggered by. Oh, that's a nice tie that I'm seeing there. I think that's a tie. I can't quite see. I need to zoom in a little bit more. We've been talking. Howdy. We've been talking about communism, and I think that, one of the reasons that people don't understand the perniciousness, the devastation that communism can bring, is because they don't actually understand what the purpose of the state is. And this is something that I see over and over and over again. The question is never, what is the purpose of the state? How big should the state be to achieve that purpose? The question is usually, which side needs to have the power? My side is the good side, your side is the bad side. And I don't really care how big the state is as long as I'm the one in charge of it. And I think this is what's really destructive, because if you talk, if you read the Austrian economists, you read folks like Frederick Bastiat, I think that they gave you the answers to this already and synthesized, paraphrased in, to quote and paraphrase some of these great men. The purpose of the state is to enforce the law. The purpose of the law is to organize for the collective defense of private property. That's the only point. So take that then. The purpose of the state is to enforce the law to organize for the collective defense of private property. So the state's only purpose is to be the organization that we give the permission to commit violence on our behalf. That's what we're doing, to protect our private property, so that I don't have to go beat the shit out of my neighbor Jim when he steals my cow and string him up by a tree and beat him with a stick until he gives me my cow back. I have the state to do that now. They get to go beat him up when he breaks the law, right? And that law means infringing on my private property. Alas, the state has become the plunderer. They were supposed to protect us from plunderers, but the state itself has become the greatest plunderer of all. And you say this to people, you say that the state is a plunderer, and so many people they'll just be like, oh my God, you must be like a right-wing, conspiracy theorist nut. You must be some sort of radical. And it's like, there's nothing radical about that statement. There's nothing radical about saying that the state has one function, and that's to enforce the law. We could at least, maybe even a lot of people would agree on that. But then, okay, then take that one step further. If the state is the one who is supposed to enforce the law, we have given them this ability, right? And because that is it is a good thing. We don't want to have to get our hands dirty. We don't want to have to just shoot everyone that trespasses and breaks the law and tries to do harm to us. We want there to be the threat of violence to some extent, organized in a way that we agree to. The problem is that the state then uses the threat of violence against law-abiding citizens, not to protect their private property, but in fact to plunder their private property. And this is the problem. But because so many people in society today have no private property, perhaps the only private property they have is their own body. And some of these people would even still say that the state should have the right to stick needles in you, and if you don't comply, that you're a malcontent, that you're some sort of degenerate, that you should be thrown in jail. So even then, they want to relinquish the last bit of private property they have, which is their own human body. But they don't have any other material private property because the money is broken. And so when you try to talk to them about concepts like this, when you try to explain that, look, the state needs to be much, 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 much smaller, because right now they're a bloated, kleptocratic, geriatric body of old farts and young staffers who are disconnected from reality and don't actually do anything to meaningfully improve your life. And yet, somehow, even though the state continues to disappoint, somehow people still will vote for more state power, more totalitarian overreach, more government control to solve every problem, instead of realizing that that is what the problem is in the first place. I don't know. It's like, I don't know how bad things have to get for people to realize. Maybe we need, maybe this will be good for New York. Maybe New York needs some full-blown communist action for them to realize that this is an unworkable system. And the only option, we've already separated money from state. Now we need to shrink the state to be as small as possible to perform its only necessary function, which is to enforce the law, which means defend our private property. That's it. But alas, the law has been perverted. I don't know what your thoughts on this are, but it riles me up because people just don't even think about this.
Okay, now the guy who was saying hi is the guy from Panties from Bitcoin. He said he know you.
But now I'm on mute. I feel bad I didn't recognize him. They've Pennies for Bitcoin is an awesome company, family-owned company, amazing people. They have Carla has a lot of panties from Pennies for Bitcoin. My beautiful wife. If you haven't checked out Pennies for Bitcoin, get some for yourself if you're a lady, or for your significant other if you are a guy. Or I think they might even have boxer briefs now. I'm not sure, but yeah,
I
awesome
don't know.
company, awesome Bitcoin company, great guy.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I do agree with you. I think that New York is gonna suffer the pain of having this kind of politicians in charge, and maybe they learn. I repeat always the same. In Argentina, we learn the hard way. In 2023, Argentina, Javier Milei, an anarcho-capitalist, a libertarian, took office, and he made a huge reducement of the state. And of course, there are things are not good now in Argentina. We are still in a big economic crisis. In fact, the United States had to help us with some money, but people still vote for him. In the midterms, Milei won the election. Why? Because even though things are not good today, we learn the hard way and we don't want to come back. Of course, it's better to have pain for a long time, for a few time, instead of being oppressed. And another thing that you said, what happened in the last years, and this is something that stranged me a lot during the COVID, that people was asking for more state. The lockdowns, the vaccine mandates, they were enforced by the states, but because of people were requesting to the states to do something, just do something, just give us vaccines, just I don't know, lockdowns. And I remember that people were super happy during the lockdowns. People, even though went to take the vaccine and show the picture, oh, I'm vaccinated against the COVID. So I think that the world and some parts of the world need to experiment the same pain that some countries with communism or populism leaders suffered in the past, so they realize where do they have to go. And probably New York needs to pay the price of electing communists or crazy people to run the city.
It's true. My father-in-law says something else. He says, very few people get smart by choice. The majority, they get smart. They get smart by force. And I think that this is very true. It's like the reality of the situation is that most people are not going to do the hard work to actually try and educate themselves and get smart. Like, it doesn't happen until the pain becomes so great that they are forced to look for an alternative. They are forced to look for a solution. They are forced to actually understand what the problem is. Because again, that's at the end of the day, most people don't even understand what the problem is. They again view government as the solution to all of their problems. More government intervention is the solution to all their problems, rather than the cause of many of them. But also government itself is not being the ultimate cause, but ultimately the perversion of the money itself. The perversion of the law is one thing. The perversion of the money itself is yet another. And in parallel, the perversion of the money and the perversion of the law, and thus the bloating of the kleptocratic state, that together is a potent combination. And it's no wonder that things are as they are. It's like with more central control comes more disparity. In an effort to make everybody equal, right? You ultimately create a more unequal and unjust society. And equality is never even should never even be the goal, right? Because we're not equal. People are not going to have. You cannot control for outcomes. You cannot do that. You can attempt to control for equality and opportunity. You can attempt to. Even that is extremely difficult. But people just don't realize that. They want to believe that you can have this top-down, centrally planned version of the world that's very palatable to them and makes them feel good and allows them to put a nice, bumper sticker on their car that signals that I'm one of the good people. I'm one of the good guys. I'm empathetic. I care. And the sad reality is that it's those sorts of people that do some of the most harm. It's those sorts of people that want to believe that they're doing right, want to believe they're on the side of the virtuous, of the moral, that end up doing the most harm. It's those people who somehow think that they are benefiting the others in society, that they are being somehow benevolent to others. And they just end up hurting everyone, right? And they end up, how do they do that? Well, because they just continue to accept and cheer on the growth of the state. And again, the larger the state grows, the more productive energy it necessarily sucks from the productive people. Because as we covered earlier, the state is not a productive institution. The state doesn't do anything that is economically productive. They are extractive, right? They are ultimately extractive. They extract via taxes. They also, through their public-private partnership with the central banks, different in various regions, but generally the same sort of thing, they're extracting from you in the form of inflation. They're stealing your life's blood. They're stealing your life's energy. That is what happens when you inflate the money supply, right? You make the money that everyone else holds worth less. And I think that this is just, it is genuinely such a crime, is because it is theft from people on a large scale, theft that nobody voted for. You could at least make the argument that if you, if taxes, okay, you guys voted for them, okay, you could make that shitty argument if you wanted to, but there's no argument for a central bank that operates with a bunch of unelected banker bureaucrat cabal leaders stealing from people on a daily basis. And honestly, like it just makes me sick. But I think the pain has to get even worse. Maybe we have to go so far down that communist rabbit hole for people to realize, oh, wait a minute, this is bad. But sadly, the problem is that once you get down there, you could spend 50 years in communism. This has happened. You could spend 75 years with a techno-communist state. You could spend 1,000. Let's hope not, because communism, luckily, like fiat, runs itself into the ground. Thank God for that. But I don't know. It's you don't want people to have to get burned by this. Hopefully, New York can be a sad little communist dystopia experiment, and people see really quickly. They'll see really quickly what happens. And hopefully we can keep it confined to New York, because we've already got enough socialism and communist ideologies pervading the rest of our society. But we're going to wrap soon. Do you want to follow up with anything just before we kind of close out here? Because I've been ranting a lot.
I do agree with all that you say, and I know that probably I don't think that we can have like 50 years of communism. I think that these regimes now, with all the technology, social media, and the information that is around, they probably will take an experiment 4, 5, 6, 10 years. People will suffer the pain, and they will realize we would never have given the power to them. And I put a parallelism with Bitcoin. I have a podcast, and I always ask the people how were they orange pill. And the most extreme maximalists like me, we were orange pill after being drug pulled by some shitcoin. So we learned the hard way why we need Bitcoin. That's why we become super maximalist, and now we are super vocal in, okay, don't touch shitcoins, because you're gonna have a hard time. If you want, okay, go. But this is my advice. So I think that the United States, or the socialist people, the people that like these ideas of money, or also Kamala, all the things, need to study Argentinian history. Why Argentina went from one of the richest countries of the world. If you come to Buenos Aires, you see like all the buildings from the beginning of the 20th century that were amazing, look like Paris. How did we go from one of the richest countries of the world to be under 100? So if you study what happened with Argentina, you will never, ever, ever vote for some socialist or communist, no matter how fancy was they say. That's the point.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. An alternate proposal would be let's just send all of these self-described communists, let's send them to North Korea for a little vacation. I will personally help to finance their trip to North Korea. I hear once you get there, it's free because it's a communist utopia. So really, we just have to get their plane tickets there. Let's send them over there. I think Zoran would love to learn about the communist utopia that has been created over there in North Korea. What a wonderful experiment that would be. He can learn so much, and he can bring those things right back to New York to help the good people of New York to see the light of the glorious light of communism. But no, really, I appreciate you joining Bitcoin Libertarian. This has been a pleasure chatting with you. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you to everybody for watching. We'll be back to our regularly scheduled Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time live streams here on Roxham TV, breaking starting next week again. Thank you for adhering to my slightly volatile schedule recently, but it is calming down a little bit. We're getting close to those holidays. I appreciate all of you guys joining here today. This has been a pleasure. Again, my name is Walker America. Thank you for watching, and remember, fuck communism. Cheers.
The future of capital markets runs on Bitcoin. Introducing Roxham, the first ever exchange where Bitcoiners can trade treasury stocks entirely in BTC. Get exposure to top Bitcoin holding companies like MicroStrategy and Metaplanet, priced in Bitcoin from the start. No fiat, no middlemen. This is what financial freedom looks like. Early access now live at roxham.com/treasuries. Built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners.
So, tell us about your furry friend here. What's his name?
Oh, this? This is Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
He's not just a cat, he's family.
Quite a name, and I must say, looks quite pampered.
Oh, absolutely. Bitcoin deserves nothing but the best. He's my little prince.
But with such a valuable pet, aren't you afraid of losing him?
Losing Bitcoin? No, it never happened before, so it's not something I worry about. Excuse me for a moment. Bitcoin, stay here, right?
Bitcoin, no! Bitcoin, come on, little buddy, Bitcoin, I need you, don't go!
In a world far away. Nah, just kidding. This story begins in this world. It all started in 1460 in Antwerp, when the first commodities exchange was created, but the real transformation came in 1602, when the Amsterdam Stock Exchange was founded. Considered the oldest in the world, it was the first to trade financial assets. Over the years, Britain expanded its colonial and maritime influence, and the British pound sterling overtook the Dutch guilder in the market. Thus, the London Stock Exchange became the financial centre of the world. The 20th century came, and the world got into some trouble. But shortly after World War II, the Bretton Woods Agreement established the dollar as the world's primary reserve currency, and the centre of the planet moved to Wall Street. Today, we're travelling at the speed of light towards a new age, an era shaped by the consolidation of Bitcoin as the currency that will define the future of the markets. We present Roxham, a new Bitcoin-denominated market that allows trading all sorts of securities, commodities, derivatives, options, and anything you can imagine. Roxham, rock-solid markets.
Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
The future